What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fire's Fire Show. My name is Jameson Wellborn, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the talented RJ Ellis and Dr. Brian Paul. I am super stoked for today's show. Today, we're joined by Quinn, better known as Professor Q, and Cory of Weaving Genetics. I connected with these two last week at the Regen Conference put on by Dutch, who is, founder of the Regen Conferences, puts it on, and kind enough to let us stream on his channel. So big shout out to Dutch, because without Dutch, I wouldn't have connected with these super talented individuals. And man, thank you guys so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. This is awesome.
Yeah, welcome, boys. Jameson has been speaking super highly of you guys. So stoked to get you on so soon after the conference, too.
Absolutely. So, I was circling these guys, and then I saw the jars, and I was like, and I was down. I looked at these jars, and they were beautiful fresh press, and tried them, and it blew me away. The first thing I tried was this Princess Peach, which we'll get into way more later. But when I found out that Cory worked with Quinn, and Cory was the breeding some of the genetics that Quinn was running, and something that we've talked about on the show is doing more of the a breeder maker connection show. And so this is the first of what I hope to be many shows like this. And yeah, guys, thanks again for taking the time. Quinn, I want to start with you. You have some incredible hash, but before we get into that, what we like to do on this show is dive into the history and the history of the maker. And so why don't you start by telling us where you're from and where you grew up?
Yeah, I'm from Westchester, Pennsylvania. So that's like where Bam Margera is from. And we pretty much breed jackasses. Like there's a lot of really shitty people where I grew up. And the good people kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So, I had a lot of friends growing up in high school. I was like a cool kid or whatever. But like all my friends were kind of shitty. Like they're mostly not trustworthy, kind of bullying people, driving drunk, just making bad choices, right? So I guess first time I smoked weed, so actually the first time I drank and the first time I smoked weed, they were about a week apart, right? So I just finished wrestling season for my freshman year. I was really into wrestling. I was varsity as a freshman. I had a winning record. I was doing great. Season was over. I decided to get drunk with some of my friends. They had already been drinking and smoking for a few months now. And we got super drunk in my basement, and we actually ended up finding my dad's dugout, with like a bunch of weed in it. My homies like puffing on my dad's weed. So I was like, okay, it's fucking on. Like next weekend, I'm getting fucking high as shit.
And so what was your parents like growing up? Like, were they very anti-cannabis, or was that hush-hush? Or?
Yeah. So I have four parents, like always. Like my parents were divorced and basically remarried really early on. I always had four parents. My stepdad was like a deadhead and an engineer, super smart, but also like really understood everybody has a different path. He was totally an artist and shit. My mom was definitely like pretty hippie type, but also operated in like a male business environment. So, she was like, had a good balance of structure and stuff. And my stepmom was the super rigid one, like super Catholic, super rigid. We always butted heads. She like loved spelling and shit. I fucking hated spelling, and my dad was pretty legit. I mean, he just seemed like a normal person, but he's a really loud Italian person. He would get really drunk at weddings and at all the family parties and always make a jackass of himself. So that was kind of the dynamic. Me and my stepmom didn't get along very well. Me and my stepdad got along super well, and then me and my mom and dad both got along pretty well. Unfortunately, it kind of made my dad the bad guy a lot of times. Yeah. So that was pretty much the layout there.
And so you're drunk in the basement. You find your dad's dugout, and you start smoking it. What happened?
So my homie puffed it. I didn't puff it. Okay. I was like, fucking crazy. He was like, dude, it's fucking weed. I'm sure. I know what weed tastes like. So the next week, I was like, dude, we need to get I'm getting high. And he had been waiting to get me
But you didn't get booked. You didn't get booked for that, right?
No. We were just chilling. Nobody got caught, nothing. They didn't even know we drank. Everything was chill, yeah. So then I go over to my homie's house. He had a neighbor who was an upperclassman. He was like a junior when we were freshmen. And he was actually on the wrestling team. So he already knew me. He was like, oh yeah, that kid's legit. You know what I mean? We were fucking cool. We go over to his house and we start smoking Illadelphs. and they're doing the thing where they're lighting it for me and pulling the slide, right? I don't have to fucking do anything. And like 3-4 bong packs later, I fall into a fucking closet, and I'm like, I think it's fucking working, you know? We're all cracking up, and we go downstairs, and I start drinking soda because I have this cotton mouth, and the bubbles start, you know, my esophagus is dry, and the bubbles are going down my throat, and it starts like pulsating through my whole body, like that bubbly soda feeling is like running down my arms and my legs and fucking everything, right? I pass out. They wake me up a little bit later to go smoke a blunt. At this point, I'm pretty much in. Like, I dig it. I'm borderline comatose. But I smoked again the next weekend, and a few weekends later, I was already rolling my own blunts and had my own. Like, my brother bought me a Sherlock bubbler, and I was pretty much smoking like on the weekdays after just a month. You know what I mean? I escalated to surpass all my stoner friends pretty quickly, if you will.
Yo, that
became a man of the cloth very quick.
Yo, that story reminds me of Half Baked. I don't know if you've seen Half Baked. That's like, I base my life around Half Baked. I'm just kidding. But like, honestly, that's like the story of fucking Dave Chappelle getting high with his boys the first time, and like, yo, when you talked about the soda, like, what's his name at the fucking Slurpee machine?
Going in.
Yeah. So what was it like? Like, was it an immediate, like, was it an immediate shift for you with cannabis being an influence and knowing that you wanted to change that life direction, or were you still very much involved in sports and cannabis was sort of something that was one of many things going on in your life at that time?
Yeah, so I was like really fucking bored in school by this point. I was always super bad at writing and reading and really good at math and science. So I had this natural just like separation from my classmates where I was like way better than everybody.
My guy.
Yeah, I couldn't fucking read or spell. Like, to this day, everybody that knows me knows I can't fucking spell, right? So my lopsided intelligence really just made it where like I didn't fit into the school structure. So wrestling was like this thing that was physical. It required intelligence. So I pretty much put everything into like wrestling and weed, and everything else just kind of like went wayside, other than like friends and homies, of course. Rollerblading, longboarding, you know, shit like that was all stuff I was into too. Surfing if I got the chance, you know. Yeah.
So were you cultivating immediately? Were you buying packs? Like what did that look like?
Pretty much the hustle was just like, I mean, it was the normal thing. We like buy an eighth and you try to sell 2 bags to your homies so you get a free eighth. But like pretty soon I was buying ounces and just trying to smoke for free as much weed as I could smoke. And I never really bought more than like an ounce or 2 of high grade when I was in high school. Like that was pretty much where like the cutoff was for me. It was pretty easy to sell grams because everybody rolled blunts. Like it was very glass and blunt culture. So like either you were packing Illadelphs or you were smoking blunts. You just wanted like a fat 20 to roll up. So yeah, so there was
people were throwing down now though. If they were buying Illadelphs at that age, RJ and I were talking about this. People were throwing down. That was big money back then.
Yeah, but like you gotta understand that's where they're from. So like that's hometown shit, right? So like I get it. It
was statusy. Like if you didn't have an Illadelph, who the fuck were you? Like you're not even trying, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And everybody's Illadelphs were always getting taken, right? So you like smoke this thick piece of glass with somebody. 2 weeks later, it get taken by their parents or the cops, and you're like, oh shit, nobody's gonna get to smoke that again, right?
Absolutely. So where did it go from there, Quinn? Like when you wrapped up high school, what was the next move?
Yeah. So I went to college. I got into FIT, which is Florida Institute of Technology, for ocean engineering, right? So I was like, hey, I'm pretty, I like math and science. Let's go engineer, or whatever. And it was by the beach, so I was like, this will be fucking dope. I was actually thought it was way too cold in Pennsylvania. Now somehow I live in Maine, but I was really pumped to go down to Florida. Got down there. Everyone's calling everything crippy, right? We were calling shit piff. Everything was piff up in the Philly area. If you had chronic, it was called piff. Down there, it was all called crippy. I learned this. So, so I get to college. I had weed. My homie had a car. So we immediately teamed up. He had a car and a bong. We would go out. We'd smoke all the time. We had math class together. We met this dude. His name is Oren. Just making sure I can like drop names. It's not overly incriminating. So I met this dude named Oren, right? And we were in his math class, and he was like, okay, you guys smoke weed. Like, come with me. He was like an upperclassman, right? And he takes us into the botanical garden on campus. We're like, where the fuck are we going? We just keep walking, and there's this big pagoda. It has like a bench with like an awning, and he's like yelling "Bork" at the people there, like whatever the fuck that means. And we roll up, and everybody's burning down. There's like a bunch of people hacky sacking and a bunch of people spinning poi, and everybody's smoking mad trees. So there was like this on campus fucking jungle that you could go into, and as long as you said Bork, everybody knew you were cool, and people were just burning down in between every class pretty much. And it was a bunch of fucking nerds. Like everybody there was an engineer or in the science division, right? So it's just these super smart people just getting super fucking high. It was really fucking cool. And that's how I found poi spinning, because you either did hacky sack or you spun poi. And I was like, I'm terrible at hacky sack, so I kind of started spinning poi.
What is poi for the people that don't know?
Yeah, so poi is like, actually I have some here. Poi is basically like this ancient Polynesian art form where you have like fire on either like a rope or a chain, and you're making like concentric circles, right? So this would be like a practice poi. It's like this is a handle, and then this is like your head. It's it's similar to a hula hoop. It's a flow art, so it's about making geometric shapes, things like that. But the fire stuff is really cool. So I got into that pretty quickly. I'd already tried like some mushrooms and some acid before, right? So this is kind of just like me throwing down and training in the evening, if you will. Yeah. So I got pretty into poi pretty quick. All the smokers either did one or the other. Yeah. So the weed there was mad cheap. Like all the eighths were like 45 or 40. Once you got to know people, I had a homie who was getting packs in from his brother, and he would just got like an ounce one time of all different like quarters. So that shit was pretty fucking sweet. Seeing real variety like Cindy 99 and different things like that. But yeah, the weed was a lot cheaper, so I was able to smoke a lot more. And honestly, I felt like a lot of the friends I made in college were super solid people. Like just people that like had your back. You didn't have to wonder if they were fucking with your shit while you weren't around. You know what I mean? Just good fucking people. So it kind of showed me there was more good people out there in the world, and everybody wasn't like where I came from. After my first year of college, I fucking started.
Wait, so that was in Florida, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so this is in Florida.
So I went to school in Florida too. Yo, that's not the way I experienced Florida at all. It's so fucking crazy. Like,
where'd you go?
I was in Fort Lauderdale. So yeah, I don't know, man. It was just like it was different times, man.
Different people, different times.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's so cool to hear, because I was like, man, I fucking missed out. Like I thought like that was the culture I left behind, because like that's exactly how things were when RJ and I met back in like university, and then I went to like professional school, and it's like, yo, it's not like this at all. But everybody's drinking, and I hear everybody's doing blow, but like nobody smokes weed, and like you can't even like fucking talk about it.
I think it's all microcosms. So Quinn, you found this like jungle with all these people, and you're like, was it an immediate like, I found my tribe?
Oasis? I think it's an oasis when it's something like that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, the vibes were awesome. Like everybody was making fun of me, which I hadn't had in a long time, because I was like, whatever, fucking cool where I was from or whatever. So it was cool for people to be like all these upperclassmen to kind of be like, oh, that's the fucking dumb kid from Philly that smokes mad blunts, It was this cool like camaraderie, nitpickiness that I really enjoyed. And also being like bad at poi was fun, like having people teach me, that camaraderie you get when you're learning something with people. Yeah, so that was pretty sweet.
That's putting yourself out there and getting fucking received by the universe and it giving back.
Yeah, it was fun, and it's fun to like be bad at something and work your way up. I don't know, there's something about it, right? It's humbling.
So what came next? Like, I mean, I know you started talking about psychedelics. Was that a really big part of the scene? Was that your first introduction to psychedelics?
Yeah, so fire spinning and psychedelics pretty much go hand in hand. Not to like blow up everybody's spot, but if you spin fire, you've probably tried psychedelics, right? So we were pretty much like every weekend just like spinning tons of fire and eating a Molly or mushrooms or acid. I really thought Molly was bunk. I was pretty much just trying to eat psychedelics. But basically we went to like Ultra Festival. So a bunch of homies went down to Miami. We all went to Ultra Festival. And I ended up like sneaking in 2 days in a row because I didn't have a ticket, and got in this like weird momentum where I was like, I'm just gonna go to all the fucking music festivals and fucking sneak in and spin fire. Like, I don't give a shit. Nothing's gonna stop me, right? I got on this just like this basically this crazy road. I went to like probably like 8 festivals. Like I went to Hangout, Wakaruso, what's the Electric Forest, All Good, just like all the big ones, right? I just went to all these huge festivals, and I basically had fake bracelets. We would cut off the ends of other people's bracelets and sew them all together and make fake bracelets. And I had an arm full of fake bracelets, like different colored duct tape. And I would just like roll into festivals and act like I had a fucking bracelet, right? So I was just like sneaking into all these crazy festivals and hitchhiking and meeting friends to travel me through different fucking events and shit. And spinning fire like pretty much without permission at all of this shit. Yeah, just doing 21-year-old shit, right? Like,
That's
Yo,
awesome.
to hear somebody's done this and it's not the fucking 70s, bro, that's so cool.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's very much like a Deadhead style, just like anything goes tour.
Were
But
you doing this alone?
I ended up in California. I was basically in Atlanta with the homie. He was breakdancing and I was fire spinning at an Alex Gray event. And we basically were just like, we don't have fucking shit to do. Let's fucking go to California and smoke weed. Like, we just drove out there with another homie who bailed on us when we got there, but we didn't give a shit. We like made it. And I just kind of traveled and did like the nomadic, like semi-homeless, semi-rainbow kid, Grateful Dead hate street kind of thing. Spent a little bit of time in the Triangle, making a little bit of bubble hash, which was really cool. And just like that's when BHO first came out. Like I open blasted into a PVC tube in Arcata, or no, in Eureka for the first time. So yeah, all that shit kind of happened. Hash kind of was really getting this crazy momentum. As far as just like Shatter and BHO and and all that kind of thing. And it was still pretty mysterious. Yeah.
So how long did you spend in California?
So I went out there around Thanksgiving time. That had been 2011. Thanksgiving 2011. And like right when like the world ended, the like 2012 December. So by 2013 I was back on the East Coast. So I was really on there for like a year and a few months, basically.
Yeah. And so when you were out there, were you still focused on the festival scene, or did the focus start shifting towards cannabis a little bit more?
Yeah, I would honestly say the focus got really lost. Like I didn't have a lot of direction anymore. I was definitely appreciating all the cool weed I was getting to smoke, like seeing Full Melt and trying different strains. I mean, there was so much. There was like some Three Kings and some blueberry and some grapefruit that I tried that were very reminiscent. Those are very pivotal on me understanding how cool cannabis could be. Like I really thought like grapefruit weed was like someone crossed a grapefruit plant with a weed plant. Like I didn't really start to get that stuff until pretty late on, what was actually happening. So basically, I had a really what brought me back to the East Coast. I had a really unfortunate event happen. So me and a bunch of pranksters went from the Hate Street down to like Market Street area. So we're talking about San Francisco. So where all the clubs are in San Francisco, we go down there to see Marty Party. So this would have been like the summer. We saw Marty Party at some club in the summer of 2012. And I took like 3 hits of acid. It was really strong acid, right? Because it's fucking Hate Street, right? So 3 hits of acid was plenty. I was fucking zooming. I was breakdancing and having a good time. And I was really starting to sweat. And my homie had this bottle of water, like a big one, like 1.5 liters, one of those really big ones. So I just like chugged half of it. He's like, yeah, you can have some. And I just like chugged half of it. I came to find out later that somebody put like a whole vial in that, and other people also put more acid in there. I had a super bad, there was good times and bad times after that. But after that event, I was really never the same. Like I couldn't communicate with people for a few weeks, and my ability to enjoy cannabis completely changed. Like me and cannabis had a very different relationship after that point on, and I never really was able to like enjoy it like I used to.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's a wild story. So how? Wow. That must have been quite a life-changing event. Like how did it affect was there a long recovery period from
I was
that?
gonna say, hold on, was there anybody there to like fucking guide you and help you out, or were you doing this on your own? Like, what about the guy that gave you the bottle? Like, were you just like on your own and like?
I was more or less on my own. When I came back to, kind of like within 24 hours, like around sunrise the next day, my homie who I came from Atlanta out there with, he had my back. He was pretty pissed at people. He was like, what the fuck is going on? You know what I mean? Like he was there to kind of like, fucking have my back and shit, which was really cool. Over the next maybe like 4 months or so, I didn't really get my shit back together. My family ended up like having me get on a Greyhound coming back to the East Coast. And that's when I was like hospitalized for the first time. I spent maybe like 30, 40 days in a psych ward and was diagnosed acute paranoid schizophrenia. Yeah. After that, I spent about a year recovering, like AA, meetings, medication, getting back to myself, breakdancing, fire spinning, trying to hold a job. I made a really good friend who was a tattoo artist in Connecticut. I kicked it with him pretty much the whole time. He was older. He was very, very helpful, a lot of guidance. But yeah, getting sober was really interesting.
Do you want to?
Yeah,
because I've got mental health issues myself. Do you want to talk a little bit about that diagnosis, just to kind of break some of the stigma about it? Because when people hear that, they think like, I don't know what people think, right? But like, because I recently realized, I've learned a lot about like schizophrenia, just like researching it myself. I didn't realize the levels, and like you can have it in different. I realized you can have schizophrenic touch disorder. So there was apparently a girl who's like constantly feels like she's going to shit her pants, so she can't like go anywhere, and she's paranoid to go anywhere because she literally gets the feeling that she's going to shit constantly. And I was like, that's like. Oh, I feel so terrible. And I was like, I didn't realize like that's even a thing, and it could affect so many different ways. And it's like, of course it can. So I don't know if you want to talk about it at all and break down a little bit of those walls, because I think when we talk about anxiety, depression, even ADHD, I think people just throw those terms out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think people assume it's like one way, and like if I have schizophrenia and you have schizophrenia, we have the same problem. But that's not really how it is. It can, just like cannabis, right? The high can be super different. You can have a huge range of disconnects from reality, and seeing them in yourself is super hard, right? Because it's this paradox where the illness affects your judgment, so you don't have the ability to judge whether you're doing good or not, which makes it really really tough in that sense. Yeah. So for me, I had a ton of auditory hallucinations, which was really frustrating. Just like hearing lots of stuff all the time can be really hard to focus. A lot of things where I would like do something super simple, which this is still what happens when I smoke cannabis, is I'll go to like tie my shoes, and I'll have a philosophical dilemma about string, and I'll be thinking about like how string was invented and like all this crazy shit, and I'll forget to tie my fucking shoes. So it's really
wait, hold on. Is that schizophrenia? Because that happens to me.
Yeah, like imagine that just being turned all the way up to 10, right? You might be having that at like 1 or 2. You're getting completely torn away from the present moment and wrapped up in kind of like a jail or a disillusion that you've created, and can be sometimes you can't get back from it. You're just stuck in like a delusion that you've made, and it's fucking hard.
Wow.
Yo, thank you for sharing that, because that's again, I like to learn something new every day, and it's like, yeah, it's not what you think it is, and just because one person experiences it. And I was just going to say to that, like when you talk about even like autism mildly in that respect, which is apparently ADHD is on that spectrum as well. It's like, wait a minute, am I autistic as well? Right? And it's like, see, it's not that different from everybody else and what everybody else experiences. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that was kind of what my point was, is that everybody's got their own struggles. And yeah, man. Did it change your relationship for not only how you want to smoke cannabis, but how you feel about working with cannabis after that and being around it?
Yeah, so I totally didn't like bail on the culture. Like when I got sober, I kept going to music scenes and spinning fire. Like I wasn't one of those people that was like, oh, I'm sober, you guys aren't my friends anymore. Like I never went through that phase that I see a lot of people going through, and everybody's entitled to their own thing, whatever helps you heal. What I kind of skipped over. So when I was like 17, I was actually diagnosed ulcerative colitis. So I started going through this thing where the weed was really helping my my guts, but it was really hurting my mental capabilities. So I went through multiple cycles, in my 20s where it's like, okay, I'm really suffering internally, but I want to like keep my mind sharp, or the other way around. So that definitely made things tough. Yeah. So I think really like getting my head to the point where I was like, hey, my health is more important, and like my love for cannabis doesn't need to be like me consuming it, right? I just kind of like disassociated those two things, and I was like, I can just love cannabis, I can see it, I can enjoy it, I can know that I have this intimate relationship with it, but right now I'm not consuming it because that's not what's good for me. Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible.
Big
man.
respect, buddy.
Big respect. I mean, I think a lot of people would walk away from the plant and kind of have a hard time identifying with that community. And so I've got nothing but tremendous respect for you for, just being comfortable talking about it. Like, this isn't even, it's a would be a tough thing to talk about for some people. So I think, just showing back up and it really speaks to your commitment to the plant like that. That's crazy.
I was gonna say, and the culture, because like it goes
Yeah.
down to they're integrated, and you kind of touched on it earlier too, and the glass scene, how they're all kind of like intertwined, and it's like someone put rainbow family, and it's like, it's literally like the family and the culture. When you like truly feel it inside, like I've said this before, I would just have a bouquet of like dank flowers sitting in the middle of like my house. I don't need to smoke it. Like I honestly don't really like smoking weed. I like dabbing. But like I would honestly love to have just a bouquet of fresh cut buds, like different ones in the middle of like the room. I love the smell. I love the look of it. I'd go up and touch it, but I'm not going to smoke it.
So
Yeah.
Quinn, what happened after you got your head back on straight and you've worked some things out? Were you determined to start cultivating, or did that happen just naturally? How did that come about?
Yeah, so like poi spinning and like I make wire wrap jewelry, like wire wrapping, fire spinning, breakdancing. These have always kind of been at like the forefront of my primary like goals. But I also saw that like having a homestead and being food reliant was like probably the best way to get those goals, right? If I could pretty much be self-sustaining, I could make as much art as I wanted, right? So these two things kind of were like hand in hand for a while. Also with all these like this health issues I was having with my guts, I felt like it was the lack of nutritional density in the food that was causing this stuff. And if I could eat real food, I would feel a lot better. So a lot of this was happening. Cannabis started being legal and really seeming like the bridge to this gap. Like, okay, if I can grow cannabis, then I can actually I can basically get paid to learn how to farm, then use those skills I learned from that plant to grow these other plants that I can eat. Like it seemed like a really good bridge to get me into farming. So that's kind of like what happened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the regenerative lifestyle, basically, because you're not just doing it for weed, you're literally taking whatever you've produced for your food and turn it into your next crop.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's incredible, man. I wanna kind of pause for a minute and shift over to Cory, who's been sitting here quietly and waiting patiently. But I know you guys connected in Maine at a Regen conference, and I think we'll lead up to that. But Cory, we got a chance to connect and chat quite a bit, and even sesh a few days after, and I got to sample some more of your work, and I think you've got a really incredible palette. And when I heard that, when I heard you talk about plants, you speak about plants the way that Mean Gene from Mendocino talks about plants, and it's something that I can't describe in words, but I can point it out. And you're muted. Oh no, you're not. But yeah, no, I'd love to hear more about your story and where you grew up and how it all started for you. You're muted, buddy. Try unplugging the
headset. Yeah, I'm plugging it back in. Maybe.
No. If you want to just hop off and hop back in, Quinn, while we're waiting on that, talk a little bit about what attracted you towards Maine. You know, what
Water.
brought
Really
you?
need water. Like clean water was always a reoccurring theme. Like, why is all our water fucked? How do I get clean water? Is there any clean water? And I really felt like Maine had the fucking clean water. And I say that to people and they think I'm fucking crazy, but they're not wrong. But also, like, how are you going to have the best plants if you don't have the best water, right? Like, you can't make the best dough without the best water. You can't do anything without the best water. So
People say that about pizza in Italy.
Right. And like bagels in New York or some crap, right? There's something about the water there too, right?
And so what researcher, an uneducated layman, what about Maine? What makes the water so special?
Yeah, so basically there's not really any fracking north of us, and the way that the watershed it moves south. So like you're in Canada, you have fire water. I have you guys messing up my water, which doesn't mess my water up at all. But pretty much anybody south of like Massachusetts, it's when the watershed really starts getting pretty ugly pretty fast. So yeah, I think it's just like a junk runs downstream kind of situation. Maine does a lot to protect their water. They already are the kind of people that do all the legislation. Like, they're really kind of gentle on salts on the roads, even though it's so cold up here. They just do a lot of stuff to really take care of their watershed. And like, I'm on a well, which is really nice.
Nice. That's very cool. So did you have friends up in Maine or
Yeah, so funny story. So the homie Hunter over at Helios Hash, we actually were super tight like in high school. When I came back to Pennsylvania, we linked up super hard. He had a huge glass collection. I was like doing the fire spinning thing. We'd go to lots of festivals. We roomed together for a few years. And he was actually baptized up here and was like, yo, you got to come up to my fucking lake house, like check this shit out. And the first time I came up and saw those lakes, like mind fucking blown, to see, like, I'd never really seen lakes like that are up here. That's not like a thing anywhere I've been, even though I've been like, I've lived in Alabama, I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in California, Connecticut, Florida. I've been pretty well all over, but I've never seen giant lakes like this and clean watershed like this and just aquatic life in the same way that we have up here. Really inspirational. Unfortunately, me and him had a pretty rough falling out. Basically, like, I helped them out. I built a huge 20 by 40 shed. I was a carpenter and a mason when I moved back to Pennsylvania for 2.5 years. So I have all this construction experience. I built a giant dry shed for us to like basically dry our first harvest in. But something got like lost in translation. Like, they paid me out for that. Everything was square and I was supposed to get like a flower payment. And basically that flower payment, like like Hunter handed it to me. And I was like, oh, sick, thanks. You hold on to it for me. My homie's coming up to grab it, a mutual friend of ours. And he was like, yeah, sure. And then basically I came back the next day and he was like, yo, what happened to it? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I gave it back to you. And there was this weird like confusion that happened basically. We weren't able to get to the bottom of it. We both weren't really sure what happened. He reached out to me like a few years ago and we both were just kind of like, it's kind of shitty. We don't really know what happened and it's frustrating, but it was kind of a shame that it all kind of crumbled. We had a really good friendship, but I have no like bad beef for those guys at all. Hunter's a super hard worker, super funny dude, really driven. And I probably wouldn't be in Maine if it wasn't for him. I would say I definitely wouldn't be up here if it wasn't for him. He was pretty influential in like getting me up here. But yeah, I'm glad that we did divide because now I'm doing my own thing and he's doing his own thing, which is certainly very successful on his part. So much respect.
How are we doing on Cory? Are you able to? Oh, no,
Cory,
we still don't have audio.
I was gonna say, yeah. See if you can click on those three dots on the bottom left, just above your screen. Edit mic settings. See if you can change it.
And so Quinn, were you able to get set up with a piece of land right away, or were you working with somebody else when you got up here, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I actually moved up and was like working with the Helios and the Hidden Forest Soil Cats, right? And that fell through. I ended up being pretty assed out. I had like I rented a camper for the winter, so I was actually doing like -10 degree nights, for like a week straight in a camper. So I'm waking up in the middle of the night, and the heat would be out in the middle of the night. So I'd wake up at 3 a.m. It'd be freezing. I'd go outside. I'd switch propane tanks so I could go back to bed. And I just started doing construction. I just went back to my grind. I started doing construction. We had there was a really nice carpentry outfit in that area that I was hanging out in, and that was really helpful. Basically, my pops was like, "Hey, you like growing weed? That clearly that's viable." Like, he ran the numbers. He saw, there's potential there. It was basically like, let's just do this family style. Like, let's get something. I moved up into the property I'm into now. I got 6 acres and like a rundown house and a 4-car garage, and I just built out the whole 4-car garage, and it's been kind of like a wrap ever since.
Very cool. Very cool. So you connected with Cory at the Regen conference in 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah. I met so many cool people there, but Cory became a immediate lifelong friend. It was pretty cool. Like, I started running his gear and just asking him about the fucking gear I was running, basically. Like, what the fuck am I seeing? And having a breeder be able to teach me what's happening through his own work was like, I mean, it was amazing, because I didn't really understand any of that stuff. I thought 1 + 1 = 2, but in breeding, 1 + 1 a lot of time equals like 0.75. Like, you don't get a better plant just because you mix two things together. And I think a lot of people are really misled by that. And I know I certainly was until really chopping up with Cory and him setting me straight.
Absolutely. The other thing that I wanted to touch on with you is you actually worked, you presented or helped Chris Trump present his IMO or an IMO in during the Regen conference. And I wanted to ask you about your experiences, because I know you've taken his courses, and not only taken his courses, but you've also taught at his been an instructor there. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that experience.
1 sec. Let's see if Cory can say something.
Oh, sure. Hey, Cory, can you hear us?
I think he said he can hear us. Are you able to speak, Cory?
Bummer. If you've got another, that's crazy. It was working before we came on. I don't know what changed.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick you off and then see if you can try back on. And in the meantime, Quinn will let you keep going.
So yeah, Quinn, I'd love to hear about how that experience working with Chris Trump was.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was fucking awesome. Me and Chris have been really good friends now for a long time. Like, every time we hang out, we get it's just one of those people where you build a friendship really fast, even over a small amount of time. There's so much common ground. Also, I mean, at first I was super starstruck, like almost shaking in the legs talking to him. So it's a lot better now. Really feeling like he's my teacher and my master, but also my friend. Like, very much sensei, that's your friend vibe, which is really fucking cool. I learn so much from him every time I hang out with him. So being able to like bring my IMO 4 and make liquid IMO, with him. I mean, we were up till like 4 a.m. the night, because basically, in order for it to be ready Saturday at noon, we had to make it Thursday at midnight. So we were up all night Thursday making it, and he's checking it out, and he's like, "Hey, this is pretty fucking good." So like, getting it signed off on firsthand, right? It's like the equivalent of Frenchie Cannoli liking your temple ball, right? Like, it's that level of, holy crap, this dude thinks I'm doing a good job. So just really cool. And Chris is a super nice guy and is like always happy to share and help out. I've never seen him withhold information, which is really insane, honestly. It's just it was super cool to be up there on stage with him, and him be happy to have me up there. That was a huge honor.
You got to rock a pretty dope hoodie that I wanted one, and then you told me how you got it, and you
wanted like 2 years.
So yeah. I'd love for you to talk about what was it? It was a Soil Smith. It was a dirty hoodie.
Yeah, Soil Smith, and it has kind of like the Banksy. It's like a revamped Banksy on the front. So it's a macadamia tree basically getting thrown like a Molotov cocktail on the front. So because you're kind of like spreading the message of plants, right? And Chris also ran a 750-acre macadamia farm, right? And then the back, right over the shoulders, it says soil smith. So soil smith is what it's called when you, if you take a 5-day intensive class with Chris and you make it through, which is no promise you will, but if you do, then you go home and you farm for a year and you come back. And when you come back, you actually teach that 5-day class with Chris. So you help him teach the new guys. And if you finish that class of teaching, you become a soil smith. And he prints that onto t-shirts, but I actually had a hoodie bought so he could print it onto a hoodie. So there's not a lot of people that upgraded to the hoodie. So I was really happy I did that. Yeah, you know, if you spend a year and a half, you can do that. It's a little tighter now because there's more people. So it's a little harder to get into that second teacher class than it used to be. You actually have to sign up for something and go through a little bit of a selection process. But yeah, I mean, everybody could become a soil smith if they put in a little bit of time. Yeah, it's a cool thing. And the other soil smiths know, like, those are the fucking homies for life. I mean, you people that also go through what you go through, you know, it's really a high level of camaraderie that you build.
That's awesome, man. So I want to move into a little bit of cultivation practices and talk a little bit about how you have your specific methodologies. How do you like to cultivate?
Yeah, so I have a 15 lighter flowering inside, and I have a 30 by 70 full-term greenhouse. So it's basically like a season extender with very little power, just some overhead fans. Other than that, it just keeps the rain off my plants, and it keeps it hot during the day. I like to get the sun. I like to get it up to 80 during the day if I can in those colder late September, October days. But that was a later addition, so I started with the indoor. So right now, what I'm running is 4x8 beds on wheels. So I push those around with pallet jacks and things like that. And I run a continuous cycle. So every month I'm harvesting. So I have 3 sets of beds. There's 1 set in veg, kind of 1 in flower and 1 in fruit, if that makes sense. So why something is at day 30, something else is just harvested at day 60, and something else is gangbusters huge in veg. And then I've kind of also got my cloner running. So it's really like a 4-piece flow. The cloner moves to veg, the veg moves to flower, the flower moves to fruit. And that flow works really well for me. I really like it because I get to put fresh flower on the market every month. And as a small company, it's really important to stay relevant and not let your name stay off the shelf for too long. I definitely battle market relevance, being a 15 lighter with basically no employees. I have 1 like part to full-time employee and 1 trimmer, and that's really all. And I watch and make all my own microbes all the way to hash, flower, everything, by myself. So yeah, so it can be tough staying relevant. But that's the basic outline, and then we could go over like soil mixes or
LEDs first of all. Are you growing LEDs or HPS or checkerboards?
Yeah, bought some California Lightworks when I first moved in, and I like them. They're they're pretty fucking good. Yeah, I'm not like a super light nerd. Some people really know their shit. Yeah. I just bought these. They don't suck, so I kept buying them.
Well, let's talk about your soil. I mean, how do you like to build your soil? And are you a soil horizon guy in your beds, or how do you like to do it?
Yeah, so a little before Leighton dropped that horizontal soil methodology, I was talking to Chris, and he was like, yo, you want to put a fuck ton of granite in the bottom of those beds because the microbes will actually go and chew on the granite and mine the boron and the silica and all that stuff and just directly deliver it to the plants. So I'm super simple. I don't do a lot of amendments, but I like to do like sand, wood chips, IMO4, and granite and kelp meal. So I'll go over what I kind of did. So I have a layer of granite and then like an inch or 2 of potting mix, then a layer of concrete sand, which is different from bar sand. So masonry sand and concrete sand are slightly different. Masonry sand is from a beach. Concrete sand is actually crushed, usually limestone and a few other stones. You're going to get more trace minerals with that. Then I did another inch, the sand also had kelp mixed in it. So that's kind of the ocean layer, is the sand and the kelp. Then I did another inch or 2 of potting mix, and then I did wood shavings IMO4. Then I did another layer of potting mix, and then I used the no-till stuff I was working. I had a bunch of sub-irrigated pots I basically just dumped in on top. So it was basically like a bunch of 15th cycle no-till stuff is like the whole top half of the beds that I have now that are now like, I don't know, 5th cycle. Each bed individually is like 5th cycle no-till or something like that. And that potting mix is pretty simple. Living Acres is a local company that fills greenhouses. They have a bunch of cool different blends, like they have oats blend and a bunch of different stuff. Just trying to keep it simple and so that's kind of the route I went.
Very cool. And what about your greenhouse? Did you dig hugels or the same methodology or?
Yeah. So I started hugel trenches before I built the greenhouse, like actually 2 years before. So I had we had an excavator come in and dig huge trenches. So I have 3 foot wide by 3 foot deep, 70-foot long trenches, and I have 4 of them. Those I then filled with a tree that I had to take down to put the power line into my grow. That had been laying around, and I've been inoculating that with liquid IMO. So I had these logs that had mushrooms growing all over them, and I put those in the bottom, right? And then I started filling that with wood chips and refilling it with the native soil I already had. But that was blended then with wood chips, peat moss, and like a kind of like a store-bought simple compost charcoal blend. Just layering it like a 1/3 organic amendment to 2/3 parent material. So 2/3 clay, 1/3 like wood chips, peat moss, and all that kind of stuff, and layered it back together. And then on top of that, I IMO5 that, started planting corn, and just kind of going bonkers, just planting and growing a lot of different things into that to get that biomass up really high. Then I put the greenhouse on top of that. And then I started just wood chipping and IMO4ing the shit out of that. So that whole thing has like in some spaces there's 7 inches, other spaces there's more like 4 inches of wood chip with mulching of IMO4. And last year was my 2nd year producing cannabis out of there. And I did a full veggie garden in between the cannabis plants. So it's like cannabis tomato, cannabis cucumber, cannabis butternut squash, like all the way down, kind of the whole thing.
Yo, that's the way to do it. See, there's no reason that you can't do it like that.
You really can.
Get food and smoke.
Too big, like oh no, tomatoes, you got to go. You're in the way of the colas. Like I'm sorry, It's all good.
So are you typically running clones or cuts, or are you growing from seed and doing some pheno hunting as well?
Yeah, so I don't take clones from anybody. The only clone I have it's from somebody else. Is the Brunch the 9.5 that you tried from Woodstock Pharmacy. Yeah. He's a really good friend of mine and a super impressive breeder. I have taken a few plants from Cory like a few years ago, but generally speaking, I'm pretty strict about that. So what I was doing was I run 100 seeds at a time all the time. So I basically 3 to 4 times a year, I run 100 seeds. I run 50 seeds in a 2x4 bed, and I have 2 of those. And I'm constantly just running those, popping pheno hunting, moving them into flower, either taking the top half as clones and flowering the bottom half, taking the whole plant out and replanting, play with a lot of different things like that to get things streamlined. But I'm successfully pheno hunting 100 seeds basically on the corner of my flower room with almost no added light. So everything that I have, that peach I hunted, the green taffy I hunted, I mean, I wrote everything down. I have about 20 strains that I fuck with that I've hunted pretty much everything from scratch. Wow. For that brunch, which is really fucking special, and I'm really happy to have. It was weird, like adopting a plant. It's been so long, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is like someone else's baby," and I'm like taking it in. So that was super cool, but not in production. I never ever sell seed plants. Like those are just for the homies to smoke through. Those are strictly for us. No stores ever see those. And then I'm running production clones of mixed plant beds. So I might be doing like 3 to 4 strains in a bed. I do 9 plants in a bed. They're really big plants, like half pounders indoors. Yeah. It's kind of how I like to do it. It's up here. It's a plant count game. So I was like, cool, I'll play your fucking game. Like I'll just grow giant fucking plants, right? So that's kind of how I've been doing it, keeping my plant count to 36 or less. Yeah, I fucking love pheno hunting. Like that shit to me is what it's all about. Like I stay up super late at night thinking about what seeds to buy and what's gonna go in the next hunt and all that kind of shit. I love it.
Okay, well then this leads perfectly into my next question, which is talking about the pheno hunting process. Like I mean, a lot of people who are new to this industry think that pheno hunting is a 90-day process, and you just flower it and you pick a good one and you go to commercialize it. And I'd like you to take us through, and specifically, you said a lot of interesting things in how you are actually pheno hunting, but can you take us through a little bit more of your process and the listeners through what it takes before that plant gets commercialized in your grow?
Yeah, totally. So really it's a lot about direction, like knowing so like for example, CSI Humboldt is a great breeder, but he doesn't breed for production and he doesn't breed for short flowering time. He doesn't necessarily breed for what I want. I think he's one of the best breeders in the game, but you have to know what you want in order to buy seeds from him. But like someone else, maybe more like Archive, they produce a more commercially, acceptable plant. So it's important to know what you're looking for to know what breeder to grab from. Can you hear me, Cory?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Hold on, I gotta cancel out. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, man. Finally, you're good.
Hey, is that working?
Yeah.
All right, I had to go get the iPad, so I'm not a tech guy.
All gravy. Back online. Online.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for having me. And basically, I've been around vegetables since I was a kid. We always had a huge backyard garden. Me and my brothers would always look forward to making our stump soup at the end of the season. Everything that was rotten got mixed together and into a concoction. Our town has.
Cory, are you from Maine originally?
Yeah, I'm from Maine. I'm establishing where I grew up. I like it here. It's a state full of good people who mind their own business. And it's a good spread. The southern part is it has all the amenities, but you can get pretty rural into
Absolutely.
no man's land, basically.
Absolutely. So you grew up on a farm?
No, just a house with a garden, a pond. Our neighbors had horses, which they had penned in our yard, so it was kind of a farm environment.
Very cool.
And also our town has like a fair. A lot of towns in Maine have fairs. They're like partially agricultural, partially like carnival, So like when I was a kid, maybe 4 years old, me and my two best friends, at the time they're twins. We all entered into this thing they call a pig scramble, and they let one less pigs as they do kids go into this giant like grandstand. And yeah, you better believe I caught a pig. I caught a few pigs in my childhood. They'd throw them in a sack.
What do you do with said caught pigs?
Well, you have two options. So the guy comes up, you're holding on to this thing, trying not to let go. When he gets there, he just picks it up like it's nothing by the back leg, drops it in a sack, ties it off, and gives it to you. And if you want, you can sell it back to the farmer for $20. That's what it was, in the 90s and early 90s maybe. And or you can take it home. And like I remember 2 or 3 times my parents let us take it home. And I have 3 younger brothers, so pig scrambles were in our blood. And so that was part of it. We got our own pigs. We did chickens once, but most of those got massacred. So forever on, I'm from
those foxes and predators are motherfuckers around here.
Yeah, we have these things called fisher cats here that are just incredible. Anyway, so yeah, we've always grown food because we're a big family and my parents are young, so they were always trying to save a buck, and it's a good thing to grow up doing. You learn more than you realize, even if you're just there watching or complaining or spraying the hose,
Absolutely. So when did your first experience with cannabis happen growing up?
I was 15, freshman in high school, and I mean in my town, a lot of my friends smoked from like 7th grade on, maybe 12. But I just, I'm the oldest of 4, so I was kind of younger from being with my brothers all the time, you know, so it just wasn't something that really caught my interest. And then my buddy's like, dude, you got to try smoking weed. We're going to go to my camp. I got blah, blah, blah. We're going to watch movies, and my grandmother's there. She's going to make us all kinds of good food. I'm like, fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. So we're in they called it the Commons, and somebody brought in a CD case. It was a John Paul Jones II CD that he took from his parents, and he took, you know, the label out and he tucked joints in behind it and closed it back up, and he gave it to us. And it's like, yes, we're gonna smoke some weed, you know. Gabosh, you know, the plans get foiled. So then, you know, a couple weeks later, we try it again. My buddy was one of the first guys with his license, so that was really cool. And his parents were just like so Brady Bunch. They could not see anything bad, and it was incredible. So we get there. His grandmother has like, I don't know, 2 or 3 different types of pie. She's making burgers, dogs, and homemade baked beans, and you name it. And they're like, why don't you guys sleep in the shed and bring the TV out there? And it's like, wow, this is perfect. So everybody smoked glass bowls in my circle. Everybody, no matter what. Like, joints were few and far between until maybe, you know, I don't know, a few years in. But and they weren't even cool bowls. They were like squiggly china glass bowls and that kind of thing, you know, just like basic cheap glass that you could buy at 7-Eleven or something. But you know, that was just what everybody used, so it was normal. And in our area, it was all commercial or beasters. You know, like, there's a lot of good outdoor in Greenbud, but kids don't really get access to it, especially if they're the not, you know, don't have a lot of older brothers and shit like that. So you know, that's what we started on. And then finally you move ahead maybe 2 years. When I was like 17, I got linked up with this kid, and he was from a different area. He'd been to, you know, 4 or 5 different schools, so he had such a different network than I did. And he's like, come with me. And he showed me just my first indoor grow I'd ever seen. And it was like it was a flood table, but the guy had these pots, and they were like probably a third full of worm castings. He had like bags of amendments and like pantyhose and all kinds of weird shit he was doing. And this guy was far out. And so he was
Wait, I have a question. So when you first
Okay.
tried that cannabis in the shed with the TV, was it was it like, yo, this is it? Like, I'm about this? Or was it, you know, something that took a while to build back into?
No, I mean, for me, it was like the missing link, you know. I was sold. I'm just a busy guy, so cannabis really helps, you know, bring my focus together. And for me, hardly any weed slows me down. Like, a weed might spin me in a different direction, but it's not going to stop me from my project, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm always impressed. Like, I get more disoriented than I do slowed down. So like, I was growing TK and L5 Haze from AK Bean Brains when he first did that project. And dude, I smoked a big fat joint. I'm looking at this job. The guy I was running a lobster wharf for had a tree fall on one of his rental properties. He's like, it's not busy at the wharf. Go fix that roof for me. I'm like, all right, whatever. I smoked a big joint of that, and I was going to go get materials. I got in the back seat of my car to try to drive away. I'm like, nah. So, I'm like, what the fuck? So, you know, that was impressive, but I was still ready to go, you know?
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yo, I love that story, bro. Okay. So take it back though. You just saw your first indoor grow. Homie's out there. He's doing some crazy stuff.
It's all White Widow.
Did that immediately make you want to start growing?
Oh yeah, but I didn't have that opportunity until I was in my early 20s. When I was 21, I did my first outdoor grow, but I just met and learned. I had a couple of buddies who were doing indoor in Portland, And that's where I got to really cut my teeth, because I would go do all their grow store runs for them. And what's cool about Portland, you know, some people don't like it, some people do, but he was growing Res Dog sour, you know, it's no way around it. And the shit was foul, and it would make drunk girls puke. It would just, you know, it would ruin you. And the neighbors would complain. And this guy had these hinged, sheetrocked walls that hung down that he could swing up. So he'd get a big bedroom in a house and he'd make it a small bedroom, you know, and it didn't look conspicuous. It was really cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah, there was a lot of tapestries and shit back then, so people didn't think anything of it. And a lot of people aren't really construction savvy in that age group, you know, when you're in your mid-20s. So it was awesome. And that was right in Portland, you know.
So
These
talk
are
to me about getting set up with your first grow. Like, what did that look like when you first started really taking this on seriously?
Yeah, so there was a local guy, and he was you know, he would pretty much set anybody up for, like, you know, I'll give you your clones, you just got to give me half your harvest, or if you can't afford them, or, you know, one of those kind of guys. And he was great. He would walk you through, he'd tell you, do this, this, and this. And I did my first ever outdoor grow as a medical grow, just a patient grow with my grandparents. At that time, my grandfather was 64 years old. And we did 18 plants for 19 pounds, all off Fox Farm in the ground. And it was all Chem Valley Kush and Blueberry Skunk. And, you know, I hadn't done it before, so I didn't know if that was good or bad. And it turns out here in Maine, if you're getting a pound or more off a plant, that's not, you know, filled with rot or whatever. It's a destitute growing environment here, you know, like it's just a water bath. So we wet trimmed that whole harvest. Like I wet trimmed a lot of harvests in the beginning, you know. That was just kind of, I didn't know. And I didn't have any real, like, my grandfather's fucking crazy, like NASCAR kind of guy. So he doesn't have, you know, he has his own idea about everything. If he had his way, he'd put it all through like a I don't know what they're called. He calls it the chipper, but it's like one of the barbecue grills with the rubber paddles.
Oh, I know.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
He goes, after your grandmother trims it up, I'm going to throw it through the chipper. You know? So, you know, that was awesome. It changed things for me. It opened some doors, and I got my first property, that kind of thing. You know, my parents helped me get my first property. And when I got my first house, you know, I bought the 3 things that everybody needs: grow lights, a chainsaw, and a dog. And I was fucking off to the races. And I got these fucking like Zoom tubes with the wings, you know, and I had a like an open style house with one little 10 by 10 bedroom. So it had like a walk-in closet that I ran 2-tiered T5 veg racks in, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't have any, my one good grow buddy, I say good grow buddy, but he was a wicked speedhead. So he was really like hard to deal with. Super fucking Frenchman too. And like, just a, you know, fun guy, but not, you know, it was just tough. And so I got all my first genetics in kind of a weird way when I started doing indoor and holding my own plants. And I was at a wedding, and so I brought weed, of course. I brought weed everywhere. Ever since I started smoking weed, I never didn't have weed. And I'm smoking everybody up, and this old guy comes over to me, and he's like, "Hey, give me some of that." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Take my phone number, give me a call." So I was like, "Yeah, whatever, you know, everybody says that." So I end up giving him a call. He invites me to his house. and he's kind of got this cool off-grid property up on a mountain. It has wind power. It has a hand-dug well. It's really cool. But he's been there since like the 60s. And he's in this kind of, I don't know, I guess they'd consider it like a hippie belt. But he gave me some plants, and I didn't realize at the time how cool they were. But one of them was Blue Buddha cross Molokai Frost, and I called that the Fat Man. And that was a really cool plant. He'd bred it outside for 20 years or years or however long working with it. And it would finish first week of September in Maine. It could make forearm-sized colas. You know, I have pictures. It just makes my wife look small. It's awesome. One bud was as long as my lower leg. And, you know, I'm just this young 20-something-year-old kid, not with that much experience, and I'm getting handed these gems. And the other one was called the Cactus, and it was a Bonsai AK Northern Lights. And then it was crossed to this production strain from out west I'm not that familiar with called Fucking Incredible. And so that one, they called it Maine Cactus because of how it grew. It was like really dense torpedo-shaped nugs. And I did have those tested because testing became an option once medical hit in Maine. And that was a 25% like zinger. And at that point, it was awesome. All the people I sold to that were in the labor field, they're like, that's good work weed. That's some good work weed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's, you know, part of the scene. And so then I also grew Black Alaskan and Alaskan Thunderfuck. The Black Alaskan was just the purple version. I don't know if it was the same or if someone made a cross of it, but every year those clones would be available through the grapevine kind of thing. And you could do 1.5 pounds off one of those, no problem. Just plug it in the ground. And I quickly got away from Fox Farm, and, you know, growing up, I think my parents used mostly Miracle Grow at the beginning. My grandparents definitely did. But I use a lot of people in my life are preached organic, you know, and growing up, you know, I'd give my parents a hard time. I'd like go vegetarian for 4 years and then just start eating meat again, things like that, you know, just being difficult. And so I was like, well, I'm going to grow this organic. And when I got to the grow store, the guy's like, dude, you got to use this supernatural shit. And it was like crystals in a jug. And I was like, I looked at it and I was like, I can't use that. You know, like he's like, it's water soluble. It's like, it's crystals in a jug. And so I use Roots Organics dry amendment line for probably 3 or 4 years, really successfully. My smallest grows were my best grows. Like if you just did it by numbers, you know, in that house in the 10 by 10 bedroom, I would grow in 7-gallon smart pots.
Yeah.
And I could get 1.5 pounds off one of those plants. It was crazy. But so anyway, at that house, when I got my first house, we put in, once I met my wife now, that was like 8 years ago, we started doing real farming because she has a real farming background and I'm just kind of a like science-driven worker, you know. I'm really curious about everything, but I just like to work. And so she's a really talented organic farmer, and so she helped us set up a really cool, like we built 6 5-foot by 30-foot beds in the front yard and a bunch of raised beds. And, you know, since then we've been growing like 75-80 pounds of garlic every year, you know, perpetuating our crop. Now we have chickens and, you know, a real farm property with, well, kind of real. It's got a greenhouse and stuff. But
so I want to talk more about, you know, how you got into creating seed and breeding. Was that a project born out of necessity? Was that an accident? How did that come about?
I was born out of interest. So I had probably grown indoor. Once I bought my house, I never stopped growing indoor. I haven't stopped since, so after about 5 or 6 years and like ordering way too many seeds off Attitude Seed Bank, I, was like, Jesus, I can make my own seeds, and I listened to a podcast. I don't know what it was, but Bog was on it. So
Yeah.
Bog's talking about breeding, and he's wicked eccentric, and I love that. So I was like, well, I'm gonna buy some sour bubble, and I'm gonna try making my own seeds. And at the time, I had a pretty good core lineup of plants. I was growing a really high 1-to-1 called Dance World. It had 16% CBD and 12% THC. And I also was growing Barbara Bud. Barbara Bud, a little finicky, but wicked peachy. A lot of hairspray. I gotta have a drink, excuse me. And I was growing mimosa. Love mimosa.
Barbara, a favorite of all of ours.
Yeah.
Jameson.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Good
she's a gem.
Yeah.
That's definitely it's a forever strain. If you haven't tried it, do. Mimosa.
Did you hear that to one of our listeners, by the way?
What's that?
Hey, Jameson.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely no. Please continue, Cory. You were talking about you had the mimosa.
Yeah, I had the mimosa, the Barbara Bud, the Dance World. I always grow a long flower. At that time, I think I had Panama Red, which was from Ace Seeds, and then also an Amnesia Haze, which was some Dutch seed company. But the one I had was like a vicious strawberry skunk kind of expression.
Mm-hmm.
Like 12 weeker, but like a couple people were like, "Don't give me that shit again. I don't like my family when I smoke it." It's like, it makes you just feel bad. But anyway, so the Dance World, it was really lanky and viney, but it had a lot to offer. Patients, daily smokers. It's an excellent variety, and so I was like, well, I need to make this in seed that's stockier. I listened to like what these guys were doing, and I said I can take two opposite plants and I can mix them together and make this a little bit more easy for myself. I heard Bog, he had short, stocky bubble gum, and so what I did was I popped the whole pack of sour bubble. I sexed everything out. I grew all the females and I saved all the males. And sour bubble's not something I would grow. As far as the structure of the female plants, they're kind of stocky. You need to basically be able to run numbers of them, in my opinion, or have an incredible veg time. So I discarded those. I saved the males. I grew all the males out. There were two. So in order to do this, I rented a bedroom at my friend's house. So when I decided I was going to start breeding, it was like, I need a hobby. Well, instead of getting a real hobby, I'm just going to start breeding and making my own seeds. So I rented a bedroom at my buddy's house. So I grow out these plants. One's a really pink, frosty, kind of looser clusters, a little more sprawled, sweet smelling, really, really sweet smelling. Very bubblegum, I guess. Anyway, so that wasn't the one to cross to the Dance World because it had too similar of a structure. So I end up using the stocky one, which was just like, it had bigger flowers than any female plant I'd ever grown, and they were pretty solid. I was like, God damn.
Wow.
And so I crossed that one to the Dance World. I saved pollen from both of them, and I tried a lot of different things, like straight to the refrigerator, dry and cure it like flour, put it in a brown bag, all these different things. And, pollen does really last if you dry it right and then keep it in a cold place. And so I made the cross, and then I grew those seeds out. I crossed sour bubble to everything, but I only was really focused on the dance world. All these guys that I respected and listened to were like, you need to breed with a focus. You need to have a goal, you know? So I'm like, well, I'm going to have a goal because I'm already kind of all over the place. So I grew those out.
What was your goal?
My goal was to put Dance World in seed form for my own use. So what I did was I hatched all those seeds and I selected all the plants in veg that looked like the mom. So indiscriminately, not knowing sex, anything. This was just my strategy. I didn't know anything besides listening to a couple podcasts. And so I took all those plants. There was 9 plants, and I think I hatched about 30 seeds. So I put them in a tent, and I just put them to flower. There ended up being 5 males and 4 females, or it might be the reverse. I'd have to look at my notebook, but it was just an open pollination. And guess what? Every single fucking male plant, so frosty. So frosty. I smoked one of the male plants. It smelled exactly like Flintstone vitamins. It's insane. You could put it in a bag and people would just think they're smelling vitamins. It's nuts. So at that point, when I was doing all this shit, I wasn't cloning any of these things. I was re-vegging what I liked. So like I had a little veg tent set up there and I just stick that motherfucker in 24 hours light, give it a top dress with nitrogen, keep watering it and wait. And they grow back. These motherfuckers grow back from anything. It's crazy. I've tried it. So at that point, I mixed all those seeds together and I've grown about 200 of those. So it's an open pollination F2 selected towards the female, right?
Yeah.
You can pull 7 out of 10 high 1-to-1 plants over 20% cannabinoids. And it's ridiculous. It's that easy, you know, at least in that situation it was. So doing that, then actually growing those seeds out and seeing that, I was like, wow, this is so easy. But, you know, then I grew out some of my other crosses and they were complete botches. So
do you know about what kind of work has gone into the dance hall prior to you getting it?
I just know that it's the seed that I got that's called Dance World is through Royal Queen, but it's basically like a ripoff from Reggae Seeds. So it's mostly Jamaican. It's Juanito Lagrimosa crossed to Reina Madre, which is just a breeder plant that they used a lot. I'm not sure. This was Fem Seed too, because at that point when I was buying these seeds, I was like, oh, Fem Seeds, I'll buy some Fem Seeds. And then lo and behold, though, that was such a strong trait. And now I've been able to use those F2 males, which are all frosty, and make some interesting crosses. But basically what got me into it was like, oh, I can now have this plant forever and I don't have to grow this low producing version of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of stuck with this crushed up Pez profile, but
hey, that's not a bad profile to be stuck with, bro.
We've pulled one crazy barbecue sauce profile. Like, it's just like opening a bag of chips, man. Crazy.
That's amazing.
My buddy's holding on to it. He's had it for like a year. It's still got it. It's full like masterpiece barbecue chips.
So being a breeder and wanting to open up large populations, how does that affect your cultivation methodologies outdoors? Are you growing a lot of stuff in 1 gallons to see how it goes, or what's your setup look like?
Yeah, so I have to be pretty vicious because we do flirt with a pretty low numbers game here, you know. So what I like to do is grow everything out and see what will show sex at 24 hours, what will show sex at 18 hours. That's really important to me because, you know, sometimes I'm lazy or sometimes I want to leave a fucking plant bound up for 2 months and not have to worry about it, especially male plants. And plants that are able to handle that have proven to me that I can give them to pretty much anybody to grow, and they're just like very cooperative. You know, it's a really big sign of stability, like all the way through. So like that, things that show sexually fast get culled, especially in veg. And that is, it sounds weird, but that's a major one, especially when you hit root bound. So like I'm growing Rebel growing gear right now. Stuff's awesome. It's so this is 4 months in 1 gallons. And so now I put that shit into flour, and that's just with a base soil with worm castings and water. And so then when I put them into flour, they're about 2.5 months old. I've gotten clones off them, right? You know, I changed that re-veg bullshit. That was crazy. And then what I do is I leave them in the 1 gallon when I put them into flour, and I put them into a drain tray that's lined with the potting mix and worm castings. So if they want to, or if they're, you know, strong enough, they'll grow into that substrate.
Interesting.
But it's not, and what that does basically is I put the first grow through heavy stress, because I can cull numbers really fast by doing that. Big temperature swings, a lot of dry off. Like I'll not water for 3 days, then I'll soak them for 2 days. I'm just doing ridiculous shit because really good plants handle that. And really weak plants don't. And you know, you can waste so much time. And like Quinn can say, like, he's grown a lot of my stuff first time, and he just is like, you know, yeah, it's just if you put the time into the parent stock and you like torture those plants, then yeah, I think anybody can make a cross probably, because you just, but whenever I pop a pack of seeds, I grow every plant, and I've been doing that for 3 years. So I'll grow all the males, all the females. The last male that I really did like an intentional cross with was a meat breath male. The meat breath and the blueberry super skunk were at the same time, but every single female plant in that meat breath out of 3 packs, hermaphrodite or male flowers, full intersex. And the ones that were the least, I cloned and regrew still. And so, but the male plant, I flowered that 3 times in my like perpetual male tent that I had down in my basement at that house. That thing was awesome. And my motivation for using it was everybody wants cookies, or that's what they like the look of. And I don't really like smoking that because it makes me feel too dry. And but this thing makes things look like cookies but have the effect of the mom plant. It's really interesting.
So let me ask you, are you doing your pheno hunting outside and then bringing stuff indoors to see how it expresses?
No, actually. I'm mostly doing my pheno hunting inside, because here production growing is done inside in New England, you know? And I do run all my gear outside, and last year I ran, 6 of each variety. So I could do a little bit of a lot, and it's a tedious process, but with the dep houses, I can crank through a lot more gear. So,
absolutely.
I do, I just usually hunt inside, and then I move it out if I think it's viable. And like, basically I've run the mother plants outside already before I've done a cross. So I know how viable they were.
And so do you typically have no real issues moving things from indoors to outdoors as far as expected expressions?
No, not at all. What I see moving things outside is the worst thing that can happen is if a plant's really UV sensitive and it gets that fucking like gag you fucking resin on it, and you just like try to smoke it, and like every joint's like just like overfilling, you know, or every drag. But overall, what I found is moving plants that you selected from full term outside, you can experience intersects inside and, you know, a managed environment, you know, because it's not really like it's not a controlled environment always at my shop. It's more of like a managed environment, you know, it swings sometimes.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, things get out of hand or you get ahead. But so what I do is I pop seeds and then I build these rolling racks. They're just like those wire racks from Home Depot. And then I run LED strip lights on them. So each rack can hold an 18-inch, you know, 18 4-inch times 4, so 72 4-inch plants. So you can hold quite a bit if you're doing, you know, efficient hunting.
Yeah.
And I don't run beds in my bedroom like Quinn does. I up pot into my beds.
Okay.
For my indoor grow. But my production inside is like I've never grown a single strain indoor run in my life. You know.
Like, help yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I literally have never done it.
So when you went to the Regen conference in 2019, did you immediately connect with Quinn, or did you guys know about each other? How'd you meet?
No, I don't know about anybody, man. I live under a rock. I like even at Regen, Quinn was just this like well, he didn't look exactly like he does now. His dreads were like barely shoulder length and he was dressed like he was straight off Shakedown Street pretty much. You know? He had a New York area code, so I'm like, dude, this kid's a fucking upstate look. You know? But I gave a bunch of seeds out and I told every single person, I said, if you grow these out and you hit me up with information, I'll give you more free seeds anytime. And Quinn's like, hey, I grew these seeds out. I was like, he's like, oh, I'm going to be in your area. I was like, oh, stop by my house. So he did. Denise is like, you having that guy come by our house? I'm like, yeah. We met him. He was nice, you know? And he's like, just so you know, I don't smoke weed. I'm not a cop, but I don't smoke weed. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, man. Whatever. Like, do your thing.
Bro, who says they're not a cop? Only cops.
It's so funny.
And well, like, it's different because Quinn was used to the idea of like, you don't let anybody on your property, you know, like it was just a different mentality. And like, I was like, I know how secure my property is, you know, kind of thing. But anyway, so we were like,
I might not let you out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, turkeys are crazy birds, you know. So anyway, he came over and he had he had a bunch of crystal rose gear that he had been growing in. He had some purple buds and they were so fucking frosty and they were tiny, but they were awesome. You know, what was that, Quinn?
Yeah. What'd you say, Quinn?
The Fire Trop was the strain I was growing. It was Fire OG, Cherry Pie Tangy, Tropicana Cookies. That was like pretty much my flagship strain for a while that I was putting into a lot of stores when I first kind of got my name in the market or whatever. That was that super perfect blood, Cory.
Yeah, so he gave me some of that and I gave him more seeds and we went our separate ways. And then he called me a couple months later. He's like, hey, just grew all these seeds out. Come up to my house and smoke them. I'm like, fucking right. So here I go. I'm taking. He's like, you can sleep over at my house, whatever. And he goes, and I don't know if that was his first time. I'd never even heard of KNF at that point. You know, Chris Trump was new to me, and I was already overflowing. That first Regen conference was like, wow. A lot of these things I was doing, I didn't know I was doing, and a lot of these things I can do a lot better, or you know, I need to be doing. And you know, Quinn jumped in like he cut a hole in the ice basically and fucking drowned himself, and because it was the middle of winter. But so I went up to his house and we smoked. Well, I smoked. Quinn didn't smoke, and we we're smoking a bunch of different things. He grew like some Sunday dough and a bunch of different things, but this is when the peach happened.
Okay.
So Barbara Bud has peach, I'm obsessed with peach.
Absolutely. Barbara has peach.
Shishka Berry has peach, I don't know. That's my opinion, but anyway, Barbara Bud has it too. And so does Princess Peach. So Quinn had 4 different, I think he grew 4 females. I don't remember how many seeds. And 3 of them were like, the base note is kind of like Tootsie Roll. And like, then one of them you can kind of add like cat puke bile kind of thing. And there's some vomit in this cross, sorry to say it, but the other one is just like pure peach rings, just like juicy peaches in a can, however you want to say it, like it's undeniable. And shortly after that, it's a kind of a finicky indoor strain, I think, like getting a huge flower return from it. But now I'm growing a couple of its sisters in production, or about to put into production, and they're showing really good yield potential. And one of them is extremely peachy, but has a little bit like of a baby powder kind of quality to it. It's like very, I don't know. Baby powder is the best way I can describe it. That like, shower smell when someone's fucking really clapping the baby powder. It's like kind of sweet, kind of powdery, kind of like not musty, but like, just like showery. With peaches. And the other one is just has a lot more of the vomit and maybe a little bit more pear. But we're going to do what's cool is originally I said, yeah, grow as much free seed as you want, but I just want to be able to breed with your plants, because if we find something special, then we need to magnify its availability.
Absolutely. So are you breeding for hash production, or is Quinn selecting for hash production?
Yeah, well, Quinn is selecting for hash production 100%, but he's also selecting for a lot of different things, but hash is like a significant qualifier, I would say. I'll let him talk about that, but I'm more breeding for profile and for growability. Growability is probably my number one thing. So like people are like, well, why'd you pick that plant instead of that plant? That plant looks fire. And I was like, well, I'm not saying I'm getting rid of the all-star, but I'm fucking breeding with the MVP. You know what I mean? Like, That's just how it goes. Yeah. I want the best. I want, like, the most cooperative plant. I think about it. It's just like you need something that you can grow, and you can always select outliers that are just like trying to like. I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to steer away like what you would consider the highest quality plant, but what I consider the highest quality plant is like, say you sold clones in the spring, for example, and you have 5 or 6 varieties that that you can grow really well outside, and you give them to like Kathy and her son and Jerry and his son and all these people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. And every goddamn one of them comes back and they're like, this is the best thing I've ever done, like you can say like that's a plant
usability.
That can just,
yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. And absolutely. What I found is by using that as my criteria, it's way easier for me to manage my like over full schedule. And the plants that come out of the crosses are just so tolerant. And I'm not saying I haven't made crosses where I've had significant intersex, but I wouldn't offer those to somebody, Yeah. And most of the stuff that I've done, like the vigilant parent testing on, has been extremely successful right out of the gate. So I don't claim to be an expert. I've been doing this for only about, I've been doing breeding for 5 or 6 years. And this past year, I didn't make any new crosses. I just grew gear that I made. And I think I learned just as much as I did in the first, series of making all these seeds, doing that. And what I also found is every single line has washers, like,
Yeah.
and people talk big game about they're looking through all these big populations, and I was like, if there's a foundational quality, like, I make crosses with mimosa because mimosa fucking bangs up here. Outside, it can go into the middle of October with little to no problems, at least the cuts that I've selected. And also it has purple punch in it, and people know mimosa washes. I crossed it to blueberry super skunk. I'd say probably 8 or 9 out of 10 plants are pretty greasy, but the one plant that is a washer, it put 5% off the press. I don't know I don't have the sheet in front of me with the breakdown.
So let me ask you this, Cory, then. From your standpoint of spending a lot of time with plants, do you feel with the newfound focus of breeders specifically breeding for hash production that the 8 to 9% that we're seeing on these GMO type crosses is the plant maxing itself out, or do you believe that the plant has more left in it, more ability to produce more resin?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but my opinion is that theoretically it's going to depend on the science of extraction, I think. And like I've been watching the hash game. Everybody's kind of going back to the roots, their hand stirring. It's craft batch, that those are the guys that seem to be getting a lot of recognition. And I don't I'm just not sure. I think that's pretty ridiculous to be able to pull. Is that rosin or is that hash?
Well, I mean, we hear these numbers, but
Yeah.
I'd love to get your take on that. What are your thoughts on where this plant can go? Do you feel that those yield numbers are pushing the plant as far as it can go, or do you feel like there's a lot of room left there? You're Quinn?
Yeah, I think 10% sounds pretty fucking top of the barrel. Like, I don't know how you're gonna, if you dynamically look at a plant by weight,
Yeah.
and you basically need to first take a fit, like what is it? 80% of that is water weight, right? So now you're taking that 10%, multiplying it by 5, and you're telling me 50% of that bud weight is resin. That's pretty intense. I feel like a lot of that is stock. I feel like you'd have trouble getting over really getting 40% of resin head would be fucking insane. So I'm not saying those people are lying, but a lot of that sounds like stock. And I feel like to get 8% or even 6% of pure resin head would be a huge accomplishment that nobody would need to go beyond. So I don't really see us breaking 10% without you just like having your hash be green and acting like you got some super amazing hash return. Just seems unlikely.
Absolutely. So, Quinn, take us before we once we got Cory back on. You were taking us through your pheno hunting process and talking a little bit about different breeders and how CSI is breeding in for specific things, and Archive or Fletch is maybe focusing on things that are more important to you. And I thought that was really interesting. So I'd like you to kind of touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think people are like, oh, this is a good breeder and this is a bad breeder. And it's like, no, that breeder just doesn't breed what you want. And it's important to line yourself up with a breeder that breeds what you want. Like, I know Cory breeds bulletproof plants. Nobody else is literally punching their plants in the face and expecting them to still produce flowers. So finding what that breeder's purpose is and what they're doing is super important. And it takes time and it takes a lot of research, and a lot of people are fucking lying. So it takes a lot of money and thousands of dollars of buying seeds and popping seeds to really figure out like who's telling the truth, what their truth is, and kind of all of that stuff. So there's just certain breeders that I might go to if I want a certain thing, And there's certain breeders that I'm a little more cautious. They put something else out that I'm like, oh, that sounds really good. But like, even I feel like I've even noticed where if someone grows super synthetically, it has more trouble in my room. Like when I transition over, it might not respond because you're making a huge epigenetic swing, right? So maybe that's just like hypothetical, but I feel like if someone's growing salts and plants come into my room, especially those plants are sours, chems, or OGs, and they see my room, they're already susceptible due to that lineage. But as soon as it has that huge epigenetic swing, you also get a bad response. So you have to buy double the amount of seeds to get what you want, or you don't buy those seeds. And like both are decent options. Yeah.
That's gold bars. That's super interesting. You know, those older, longer held things, that makes total sense not transferring. I wanted to talk to you about your experience with KNF cannabis, and as far as how the plants express themselves differently when utilizing those methodologies. Are you seeing, have you been able to see case studies where, you know, the plant is putting on more weight or more vigor, or is stretching less consistently, or do you find that it's always different on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, so I like to use the tomato analogy. So if you go to the grocery store and you buy a super juicy red tomato, it doesn't taste like fucking anything. And I think a lot of people are kind of growing weed like that. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. We're all doing what we can with the tools we have. And I'm not here to like knock bottles or salts. I think if you're growing plants, we're all on the same team. But if you are growing in an NPK based system, you're generally going to have plants that look better than they are. I think that, as a rule of thumb, holds pretty true. And I think KNF offers these on-demand minor minerals and minor nutrients, and this there's an exchange that's happening with the root exudates and the microbes in the soil, where the microbes are actually going and mining whatever the roots want, and reading the root exudates and creating this like exact exchange of the perfect amount of things. And while your plant may look like whatever your plant looks like. So let's say I'm like, oh, this wasn't a good run, which all my friends know I say that all the fucking time because I'm very tough on myself. So if I'm like, oh, this isn't that good of a run, generally it smokes better than someone else's weed that even looks a little better. Like like an organic and a living soil biological cannabis is going to generally smoke better than it appears. So when you start getting weed that looks really fucking fire and is grown KNF or regenerative, that shit's gonna fucking slap. And that's what I've known to be true, where anytime it's like Pepsi Challenge and something looks like it's on my shelf, most of the customers are not having the experience that is keeping up with what I'm putting on the shelf. And obviously I'm just getting input from one side of the fence. I'm not getting everybody's story. Maybe that's not all true, but I think we've all had a backyard tomato and we've all had a store tomato, and the difference between those is like this minor mineral and this complex sugar and this root exudate exchange that I'm kind of talking about.
Absolutely, man. I completely agree. That's been my experience. I wanted to ask one last question before we move over to the hash. Is, other than examining the glands laid in flower, and of course just washing the material, are there any other indicators during the cultivation cycle that you have found translate into good washers?
Yeah, so I think visual appearance of the trichome head is extremely misleading and has almost no value. I think that where the value lies is in the toughness of the actual cuticle. So what I'm usually doing is getting a box of rubber gloves, and I'm going in and I'm individually swiping each plant and rolling it, and I'm looking for heads that roll and then melt. Because if they just roll and they don't melt, they're just going to make rosin. You're never going to get melt. If they grease up immediately to an olive oil-like consistency, it's not worth your time. Generally, I like when things are really tacky. So like, yeah, it smears, but now there's all this grip and you actually can't even slide the gloves anymore. I find this textural toughness. So there's two things, right? There's the toughness of the cuticle, and then there's the viscosity of the internal resin. So if you think of a tomato full of paint thinner, that tomato skin is not going to hold up to those solvents, which are the terpenes inside, like this kind of paint thinner water balloon. Whereas you could get something that's more of like a honey inside a watermelon, that might not ever be melty because the skin is too thick. So you kind of want somewhere in between where you want like maybe an apple that has honey inside of it, you know? So I think these are the main two factors that I feel and that I see making a big difference when the wash, when things come out, and not just getting through the wash, but having something super fire on the other end. Because I don't really care if it's 10%, if it's boof, you know, like it needs to be special, it needs to be medicinal, and it needs to be tasty.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really cool answer. Are you custom tailoring your cultivation methodologies at all specifically for hash production? Are you doing anything differently that you would, you know, for example, if you were growing for smokable flower that you might do differently?
No, I'm generally waiting until the end and deciding what I want to wash and what I don't want to wash. And there's really little difference. My last defoliation is like day 30, day 25. I'd like to be done defoliating by day 25. And at that point in time, nobody's really touching the weed again. And I think just keeping your fucking hands off the weed is really important. And then I like to chill the room when I harvest. Sometimes I'll even export things to a different cold room to buck down into buckets, but generally just I'll turn all the lights off for that day, not off, but dim them down to like 15%. And I'll try to chill the whole room down to 60 because when your lights are dimmed, you can get your room really cold, right? Because those two things are battling each other. So when you put all your AC and your lights down, you can get your room down to like 60, 65 with no sun because your plants aren't metabolizing as fast. And I feel like that's a really nice, simple SOP that can really help people have more success with harvesting their resin into buckets. Something else.
You're harvesting, really.
I take a 5-gallon bucket. Yeah, really, even with flower harvesting, right? It's really nice to just like to get the speed of the metabolism down and get the temperature down, so you're not greasing out your resin. I like to take a 5-gallon bucket, line it with a few inches of ice, and then I line that with a turkey bag so that the bottom of that turkey bag is being chilled. So as I'm bucking in, the material is generally even colder than the room, and it doesn't take a lot of work. And if you have a few of those buckets, you can throw the buckets in the freezer. So you always have like the bottom 3 inches of 5-gallon buckets frozen. And that's the SOP for me harvesting as well. And then the big turkey bags, the buddy bags, they actually just fit all the way into a 5-gallon bucket. And I use fucking hair ties over top of it. Same hair ties I use to put my hair up. So I've always got a bunch of this floating around when we're doing greenhouse time.
That's very cool. That's a cool little insight there. What are your determining factors for when a plant is ready to harvest? Are you looking at amber heads, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, so generally I was very much of the mindset of like, oh, there's this perfect window, it's correct, don't mess with it. You know, I actually heard Professor P talking a few years ago, who shout out, he's a huge friend of mine and a really big inspiration. I was listening to him talk about like that scale is a tool. So if you have a sativa and you want it to be more sativa, you should be harvesting earlier and you should be pushing that to like 20 or 30% clear heads so that you can exacerbate the effect of that sativa. And same thing with like more Afghani knockout stuff. Push it till you're 30%, amber, and you can slide this scale to match the experience that you want to give the end consumer with the hash that you're providing. Also with the whole the stipe cell, disc cell excision, completely mind blown. So also everything I said is pre me having that information, and I am now like recalculating and calibrating everything. So
absolutely
hands off on the whole thing. Yeah, big stuff I'm learning. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey man, that blew our minds too. I think that was a really cool thing.
Are you guys 100% following that methodology now of when you're seeing the restriction on the stock?
I just learned. I'm just about to apply that methodology.
I will be. I learned it maybe 2 weeks ago.
And so like I'm definitely investing the time and the effort into seeing what the wash viability is of the mother plants that I'm going to be using moving forward, because the market wants to know these things. And, it's just important because I need to sell my product too in the market, so we're like, I'm breeding from like a market viability standpoint. Like this is good saleable, finish
absolutely. Wash
selection, but
wash
that's so I'm doing experimenting, washing whole plant, washing just lowers. And like, because some people want to harvest some flour and they want to harvest some hash and they want to market those things together. So like, all right, so I know what I can get off a whole plant. Can I harvest all my tops and still hit those same numbers? You know, and like Quinn said, I mean, I'm doing KNF inputs and then some of my own kind of things that I learned along the way, but it's still like seems like he said if you're looking at the resin, and I'm actually doing the ice jar. Some people say that doesn't mean anything, but if you're putting all your varieties side by side, equal weights, equal amount of ice, equal amount of water, it does tell you. It's a comparative information, and I've found even with breeding, pheno selection, everything, if your fucking conditions are shit, it's still comparative. It's still side by side. So like you have to use all those tools.
Quinn, do you use the ice water jar methodology as well?
So I've gone through a lot of progression of that. So I keep trying to like scale it up and get to somewhere where it's a little more viable. So the last time what I did was I took a bunch of half-gallon mason jars. I strapped 20 grams of all the best pheno hunt from that round that I like. So first I select for flour usually, and then I say, okay, these are the best whatever for flour. Now let me wash all those and do like a side by side and see who is the best at both, right? So what I did is I actually taped a bunch of half-gallon mason jars with ice and weed and water to a big 2x4, and me and my worker fucking shook that for like an hour and then dumped all those through a set of bags. So we actually got resin to smoke. So we had 73 to 160 micron resin of everything to smoke, and that was helpful because then you can actually see if you fucking like the resin, right? Because that's really number one. And you get some amount of pass fail, like, oh, this was the percentages, and you can compare them to each other. But this time, I'm trying to just completely wash the whole pheno hunt except for the top eighth of every bud. So I'm trying to like basically every time I do this, I just move closer and closer to washing the whole pheno hunt, because when I do that little jar trick, I still have to regrow all that weed, and it ends up killing me like 9 months before I have the pheno selection done. So I'm really trying to get into the habit of that. Even if it makes my life harder in any way, it doesn't matter because it makes it 9 months faster. So
yeah, absolutely. So are you purely doing live whole plant fresh frozen, or are you experimenting with cured material as well?
Yeah, so I would love to experiment with cured material. I'm not quite there yet. I was up to my eyeballs with fresh frozen all winter. So I have a jar, like an ounce of peach that was from trim that was really good. It was like the first thing I broke all my equipment in with. And I've just had people smoking through that for a while. It came out really good, dried and cured. But yeah, I think I want to have a space in my offering for a preserved and a cured product, which is kind of how I view those two products. I think they're very different, and I think there's a lot of benefits that each of them bring. But baby steps, like right now I'm not there with the cured stuff yet.
Do you have like a close group of confidant like tasters that you look to get information off? Because running your stuff as fresh press and then fresh press not being very aromatic, you probably aren't able to get a really good read off of what that fresh press tastes like versus something that's cured out that you could really get a nose on. How do you work with that not consuming cannabis?
Yeah, it's super difficult. And the main thing that it does is make me fucking second guess myself. So I'm sure, as you know, Jameson, I didn't have confidence that any of that hash was any fucking good because I don't fucking like believe anybody, right? Like I get so many answers one way or the other that I'm always just fucking not sure. So I have a lot of friends that smoke my weed, and then they can say, oh, this flower is this hash is a good representation of the flower. So there's a lot of that happening. I have Cory. I have my brother and his roommate. My brother smoked a lot of my weed. I've trained him to understand genealogy in a lot of ways and like tailored him to be able to give me the information I'm looking for. He's also really susceptible to certain things where my worker, is like he like doesn't notice anything narcotic. So like any indicas, any sleepy stuff, he's like doesn't fucking work. I have another friend who's the same way with sativas, where they just roll right off of them. So I have these extreme types of endocannabinoid systems that I get to run the hashes through and kind of be like, oh, okay, this is this, and it doesn't work for that. Also, my brother's roommate is a wine sommelier. So he is super fucking helpful. We stay up all the time just talking about hash and weed and how it relates, and he's smoking and we're hanging out. Shout out to Mike, Master Shake on Instagram. He's super fucking cool. Gavin over at Ganja Berry, he's the one that turned me on to the whole fresh press thing. I was like, this fresh press stuff is bunk, and he's like, nah, dude, this is the way. He's like Mendo Smith level. He's like fresh press or die. So he does good. This season, I actually gave out a bunch of hash to Beyond Organics and a bunch of hash to Moon Jelly Melts. And I was just like, yo, here's a bunch of fucking hash. Like, tell me what the fuck is good. Like, tell me what you hate. Tell me what you love. If you had to get rid of one, tell me which one it would be. So I do have to kind of put myself out there for R&D.
For sure.
And the more you do, the less clear the information is. I've got people that are like, green taffy is my absolute favorite. I've got people that fucking hate the green taffy. They think it tastes like burnt popcorn. So I can't really lock down much of anything other than that. I guess my hash is decent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do pull melt. So you separate that out?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on how much. Like, I had one plant of Princess Peach in the greenhouse this year, so I didn't really look for melt in it. But if I'm running like 3,000 grams or more, I'm definitely trying to pull some melt. I think as a small craft producer, it's like almost my duty to look for melt. Like if you're making resin that's good enough to have melt and you're not looking for melt, I feel like you're kind of like screwing everybody over. So that's kind of my stance there. The Stardose, he throws mad fucking melt. I had this one run, it threw over 50% melt. Both the 90 and the 120 were full, like complete, 5.5 star melt. Absolutely amazing. It did like over 4.5% and threw that much melt. It's an amazing plant, and it's like it's been the GOAT forever. Like it's always the plant I compare everything else to: indoor, outdoor, yield, vent time. I mean, it's really a fucking amazing plant. And so that's just been such a teacher. Like that has been that plant that in every way has always been teaching me. Whether it's resin or outdoor propagation or topping or training, whatever. That plant has been a huge teacher.
Talking about yield numbers and having a math background and a real understanding of cannabis cultivation, what are your thoughts on the realistic viability of, are we actually comparing apples to apples when we as makers are talking yield numbers? Like, is that something that bothers you with, the amount of active water in the plant and a number of other variables? Or do you feel as though that, these are all small variables, but all in all, the information that's being transferred is valuable?
Yeah, I would say mostly it's drive. Like I hear people hitting these crazy numbers, and whether they're fucking real or not, it makes me want to get after it. So that's really valuable. I think that we're all comparing similar stuff as long as we're talking not off the plate. Like I talk hash numbers, and I also throw out my 45 and my 160. So those don't count. So I'm talking 73 to 159 micron in bubble bags. Like that's to me, that's my hash number. Everything else is food grade. So my number is going to be different because I know a lot of people leave their 45 or their 40 in, and that's awesome. And hopefully someday I have a gentle enough hand that I can do that too. I'm not there yet. So there is
the press number is important.
Yeah, I think it is important. I also think to me, more importantly, is kind of like the first pull 9120 number. Like what I really want to know is like what fell right off and what is full heads and how fucking greasy is it in your fingers. Like to me, that's where the magic is. And the press number, you can also figure out that magic. You can also learn that magic from the press. So there's a few things that I'm looking at where I feel like are indicative of a plant that stores its magic inside of a resin gland in a way that extracts well through water. Like I guess that's kind of what I'm focused on, and I think there's a few ways to see that, and a few ways the plants can do that. Chalkier resin, greasier resin. How aromatic is it when it washes? How much does the terpene stay inside the head? Sorry, I got a little off topic, I think there.
No. It made me think, Quinn, that we had a gentleman, a friend of ours, Chevy, on the show, Van Gyptian, and he takes resin from the barrel and puts it in his mouth and eats it. And like, I don't know how sensitive you are, but that's just THCA, right? Like, so it's the mouthfeel of it.
I use my fingers a lot and like kind of like jam it in my nose, but yeah, I heard him talking about like biting on it. So I got to be careful because one time I did eat some bubble hash like a few years back and I got fucking lit. But that wasn't fresh. Like that was older bubble hash. So I don't.
Your system is sensitive.
It might be. I don't know. But
so I might just baby steps with it and play around with it. But dude, Van Gyptian talking about that fucking caviar shit where the weed goes right into the ice chest. Yeah. That shit was fucking blowing my mind. Like I was like, so there's been some really cool tech you guys have been throwing down. I'm super hyped on.
Absolutely, man. I wanted to ask about washing. Are you a hardcore hand wash student, or have you experimented with machines and the bubble nows, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I totally think you can make amazing hash anyway, as long as you're paying attention. I think it's easier to pay attention when you don't have a machine to take your attention away. I am washing in a 30-gallon Bruteless by hand. I don't even really let my workers stir. It's really like time for me and the plant and reflection. I really like it. The smells, it's fucking great. And then I'm like pouring through 25. I think I have 25-gallon bags that I'm pouring through out of my 30-gallon Bruteless. And that goes really fucking great. I really like that.
What kind of bags do you use?
I use Bubble Man's bags. Definitely big shout out to Bubble Man. Like there's other people that were making hash first, but I don't think water hash would be nearly as accessible as it is if he didn't do what he did and really stuck his neck out there and make bags available to everybody. And big shout out to everyone else making bags too. I just felt like it was appropriate to go that route. Hash Church is dope, you know.
Absolutely. Shout out Marcus. He's done a lot for this industry. There's no arguing that. So with that thought on machine washing versus hand washing, are you thinking that is there a ceiling that commercial washing can only get to when compared to hand washing, or do you feel that the right machine at the right run at the right RPMs by the right person can create just as good of a bubble as somebody hand washing over a Bruteless who's done it for many years?
Yeah, I would say that I agree with the fact that it could happen. To me, the hardest part of making resin is fucking growing it. And if you're running a giant commercial machine, you're probably growing like kind of boofy weed. Like it's harder to grow weed to scale than it is to make hash to scale, in my opinion. Also, there's a lot of hash makers on this show where they're at a fucking level I'm not at. So I'm not saying that it doesn't get that complicated and I'm just not new, but like a 10 lighter and a 1,000 lighter, not the same thing. And washing them two different ways isn't going to make the fucking 1,000 lighter like probably fucking dank, or maybe the 1,000 lighter is dank, but if it was a 10 lighter, it'd be danker. Like, I think that scalability comes in the growing fire weed. And it may also be hard to scale the washability too. I feel like the grow part is the bigger obstacle in my eyes, because you can just do smaller batches. But yeah, putting 100,000 grams into a machine does seem tough. That Whistler Tech stuff seems cool. Resin can seem a lot better than it is, though. You know, like resin is just like a gray, dusty powder. You can make it appear to be fire, but like, is it actually fire, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cory, I wanted to ask you what the most surprising flavor profile that you've come across in recent times, other than the barbecue chips? What other profiles stand out to you?
Of a cross that I didn't make that was just absolutely mind-blowing is the Miss Universe F2 from Professor P in Dynasty Genetics. I did make a cross with that, but I just haven't grown it out personally. I have a few people who have. It's crossed to the Wilma, actually, so it has a pretty broad cannabinoid profile, but it's extreme fruit. The mother plant was like pineapple, strawberry, pina colada, just fucking buck wild. Strawberries and cream on the plant. Then once you dried it, it got this pineapple tang that was just buck wild. But for me, what's interesting, one of my good friends, he's Cannabis Cove Hydroponics, so he grows a bunch of my cuts. And so I don't push my plants in my flower room. I'm KNF. I'm pretty passive. I guide the plant and I let it do what it does. But I can produce really amazing smokable flower doing that. And I also feel like I can get the most effect out of every plant growing varieties in a room. But that Miss Universe was pure strawberry pineapple, like pina colada, frozen drink. I don't know why it wasn't just the fruit, but it had that sort of like creamy, like alcohol almost. Like, I don't want to say sangria. It wasn't like that Hawaiian sangria that you get in like Kona Gold, but it was like a sort of, it was awesome. So yeah, shout out to that.
That's incredible. So
I'm a fruit addict too, so fruit is what really I tend to like the profiles and the effects that I get from fruit. I need an upbeat, like energy driven strain.
What was the varietal on that barbecue chip that we were talking about earlier?
Oh, that's in the Wilma F2. So
The Wilma F2?
That's the Dance
Crazy.
World Sour
That's
Polo
wild.
project. Yeah, there's some, and you know what else is really interesting in that? The THC plants. So I mean, this is probably what I should have told you, Jamison. The THC dominant plants in that profile, it's like having sex in a tent after like dancing all night at a festival. It just
yeah.
It's just like we both don't smell good enough to be doing this right now, but this is just fucking gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
It's like bad breath and fucking body odor, but like also somebody tried to spray something that like added a little bit of fruit, but it's just not cutting it. It's fucking it's special, and it's it was pretty stealthy as far as like I'm mostly able to pick and veg by structure, and this is one of the plants that got by me, and I was surprised by the profile on it. But as soon as I like it got maturity and veg,
on that pick and veg by structure. Talk a little bit more about how the correlations that you're able to identify.
Okay, so I don't top plants when I'm selecting. So like, say you start with a population that you've grown out all the males and all the females, and you haven't touched them. You've let them keep their natural structure. So then you can kind of create a photographic memory of, oh, well, the plants that had this weird, like, viney shade branching, like, oh, all the tertiary branches were like, pencil lead thin if they didn't have light. That might be a marker for something. Like, I don't know what it is, but it was definitive within 5 of these 30 plants. Yeah. And so, like, if that's in the plant that I like at the end, then that makes it easy. So, like, the Dance World, it grows a lot of flower sites. So the internodal spacing is short, but it's not like on the stalk. So all of those become branches. So like to grow it effectively in production, you have to do quite a bit of like undercutting, but it produces amazing flower if you just do that initial grooming on it. But that body odor terp is just like, I mean, you'll know it if you smelled it in your life, Like if you
Oh,
bump that plant, you just be like, so.
I've smelled it. So would you say you breed specifically for fruit and just kind of come up on these stranger profiles? Or
I breed for effect.
you breed for effect. That's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely. But my preferred effect is generally found in that fruit range or like something fruited. I've been trying to branch out, and now I'm into the Salmon River OG from Dynasty. I grew 3-4 packs maybe of that in my last big pop, and a lot of the plants are too short and stocky for me, but I was able to pull 2 larger framed plants. One of them is like a really deep traditional kush with like kind of a lime pastry over the top. Really like it. Super complex. And then you taste the rosin from the other one. It's like coffee burning furniture, like OG fucking nasty.
Mothball.
For the win.
Mothball.
Is amazing. So good.
Yeah. The flower is fucking nasty. It's awesome too. So the first time I just pulled that for rosin because it was clearly going to be productive and the profile was incredible. And a lot of the rosin, I don't go out and buy a lot of people's weed or hash. I'm fortunate that I know some people who offer to give me their hash to try, and that's great. But I just grow a lot of varieties, so you have to do a lot of your own testing.
Absolutely.
It's just it's a guilty pleasure, I guess. But
what other was the green taffy yours as well?
Yeah, the green taffy. So when I first got on Instagram, I'm a little late to the party. I'm not like I've ever been a Facebook guy, that kind of thing. I don't do it. But I'm like, well, Instagram's awesome. My buddy's like, you can fucking see people growing weed on there. I'm like, awesome. So we get on, and then Capulator's fucking selling himself, just like wrecking it. The guy's got this fucking amazing thing going on. He's doing the little green hat picture game, and so I got second drop max seeds, and I grew out the pack, and it was cool. I didn't necessarily know what I was looking for, but I hadn't grown a lot of hype, and like because I hadn't really been on the internet, I didn't really understand how to like receive hype. Seeing it in the market, it was like everybody was so excited. I was like, I gotta see what this is about. So I grew the Mac, and I pulled one that smelled exactly like Lucky Charms. It was just a breakfast cereal pheno, very apical, but it put out these little strong arm like secondary tops instead of holding like a big main cola. So I was like, well, we can work with this. I hit it to the sour bubble, and Quinn was like, oh, I'll grow those. And it has insane green apple terps. Insane. There's bubblegum there for sure. It was hit with the more bubblegum dominant, that like pink crystally bubblegum sour bubble male. But if you cold start the hash that Quinn makes, it's incredible. It's like tangy green apple. You can like feel the juices when you're biting into the apple. It's awesome.
Oh, it was incredible. I hit it, and Quinn told me hit it a little bit lower, and I did.
For sure.
Incredible. Definitely my number 2, but I know MTS Farms probably his number 1. What else? What else is Quinn working with that you had bred?
So he also was growing out the orange cream pop. I don't know if he's holding it anymore, but that one he placed at the high 90 cup with that flower. It's a mimosa crossed Wilma, and his profile is what determined the name. It's very it's spot on. Like you got a fucking orange cream pop from the ice cream truck,
The Flintstone, if you guys remember the Flintstone push pops, it's like spot the fuck on for orange Flintstone push pop.
You're like, this is too creamy.
So good.
Oh, I do remember the Flintstones push pop. That's too funny.
But that cut's pretty interesting. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Please talk about it.
So Quinn's not a testing guy, he proofs in the pudding. We're gonna we're going to prove it in the bags. We're going to prove it in the bag, you know? So, but the competition tests strains that place, and the Wilma is that high cannabinoid 1-to-1 plant. So the orange cream pop cut that he holds is around 17 to 18% THC with 3% CBG in the flower. So, and that's seemed like a pretty high number compared to what I've seen through the random testing.
Yeah, for sure. That's a high CBG number. Definitely.
So what that turns into is this amazing body encapsulation pain relief. So basically, I had a friend, we were building the greenhouse, and I had a friend, he like pulled something in his back and legit could barely move, and like started smoking that and was able to like get up and walk around again. So, but it doesn't knock you out at all. So it's got that kind of like nice head buzz, like
It's movie
brightness
weed.
Cory really likes to breed for, but something about, I guess, that CBG, I don't know, makes it where it's really good for daytime physical pain. So that's kind of like how that all came together. It's a little paradoxical because you don't get crazy high, but if you have an ailment that you want to feel better, it's fucking amazing.
Plus, it
so
lasts for a long time.
Yeah, it could be a little rough in a more recreational based, or like people that are trying to smoke for fun or to get super elevated, they might steer away from it because it's a little gentler from that standpoint. But if you actually have an ailment, it's really fucking good.
Wow. Quinn, what else do you currently have in your stable that you're running?
Yeah, I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget.
No, I'd love to go through them.
So I'm going to go through and then you tell me what you want to hear more about. So Stardosy, Sticky Papaya, Galaxial Stardust, Lightspeed 18, Lightspeed 4, Lightspeed 6.
I want to talk about the Lightspeeds for sure,
cool.
Because I have to try them.
Yeah, the Lightspeeds are fucking fire. Rose Gold, Matterhorn, Dog Breath, Sunday Dough, Orange Cream Pop, Green Taffy, Princess Peach, True Faith, Loose Lucy, Brunch to 9-5, Black and Blue Magoo, Half Cap Sour, and Half Cap Preserve. So that's like my current line.
Is that
Plus, I have a pheno
Archive Rose Gold?
Yeah, those are Archive Rose Golds. Yeah, they were so mostly herms. Like I had a super crazy herm call on that gene pool. There was 3 plants left. They were all pretty nice. They're really small, but this one particularly, my worker wouldn't shut the fuck up about. Like he was like, this is the most insane floaty video game, like euphoric high. Basically, he was like, I don't know if I like this or the peach more, but it's on that level. So as soon as someone says it's on the level of the peach, it gets kept around. But it's got these huge, giant fucking soda can buds on this dinky ass little weak plant. Super funny looking, but really nice pineapple, like kind of like pineapple gusher terps. Really fucking good.
Oh, crazy. We had one up here that was like a burning, rotten mango soap. And it was crazy. But yeah, like a great effect on it. But yeah, rose gold, that's a super interesting one. You don't really hear much about.
Yeah, I feel like it got slept on, and it definitely made some really nice hash.
I agree.
Yeah.
Very nice. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hash. Beautiful rosin.
Well, I don't like lemon terps, and I don't like orange terps. And I really enjoyed both your lemon and your orange terps. And I tried the 18 and the 4, and to me the 18 was much more appealing. But to be able to experience something that I usually don't like that I enjoyed, it was really nice. So I'd love to hear more about those. What was the name of that cultivar again?
Yeah, Lightspeed.
Lightspeed, yeah.
Yeah, so I hunted the Lightspeeds at the same time as the Rose Golds. They're both moonbow crosses. I like to do that just in case, for this example, one gene pool's a bust, you still have something that you like. So basically what happened was I hunted that gene pool and there was about 5 super amazing plants. So I had 24 feminized seeds. I probably flowered out 20 of them. They were all fems. Then I culled all the weak shit, and I was left with like 7 plants, ended up getting rid of a few and having 5 really nice standout plants. One of those plants tasted like fucking tomatoes, so we got rid of that plant. It was the weirdest flavor ever. And we were basically left with these really four nice plants. One was the cherry pie pheno. That the flavor wasn't very good for hash. We got rid of that, and we were left with the 6, the 4, and the 18. The 18 is basically the pure lemon peel pheno, so it has all the lemon I-95 kind of thing. So it's this really cushy, greasy lemon head candy. So it's really nice sugary lemon with a really nice pine sol and kind of a greasy OG. Really all dynamically tied up well. There's a little bit of sage to it, almost like my brother calls it like the lemon squares. It has this like earthiness to the lemon about it. So that is pretty. That plant is really amazing. Does about 4%, 4.2% to hash, and is the biggest flower yielder by far. Really huge flower return. Really awesome. So that was kind of the most like the mom and most like the dad, quote unquote, even though they're both females. The 4 is the most like the moonbow. So the 4 is almost a pure moonbow type, from what I can tell. We call it the Funyun and Skittles pheno because it has that like that face off OG isn't like a piney lemon OG. It's more of a warm, hot, trash, like funky OG. So you have this really nice funk with this really nice Skittles, and that's really what it is. It's a pretty complete profile with just the candy and the funk. So those two plants are really different. So the reason I picked them is because they're perfect opposite ends of the same spectrum. I'm probably going to reverse them onto each other and do some feminized S2, like mess around with some in-crossing there, because the gene pool was really fucking amazing. Yeah.
Very cool. And the Matterhorn, that's from Kaya at Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, so that's from Kaya. So I got a bunch of stuff from Kaya, some Tati's tea. Shout out to Kaya, fucking K&F homie, fucking crushing it. Dude, I was listening to the episode where he's like screaming about the dank. Like that was
that was really awesome.
You need to have the fucking dank. Like so good. So good shout out to the fucking dank. So yeah, so I hunted through a bunch of stuff. I've hunted through some coffee, BX3, like the coffee cubed and the Tati's tea, and the Matterhorn really was the winner. Basically I got a pure triangle kush type that finishes in 8 weeks. And it's fucking bulletproof outside. Super amazing. It doesn't wash for shit. But that's like okay. Like I have flour that's just for flour that I put on the market as flour. So really nice for me to have an OG Kush type in my arsenal. And it's really interesting. It's like super umami, almost like a soy sauce. Has a lot of Chinese food, incense, soy sauce, seaweed, like kind of terps. Super fucking different. Super different.
Yeah, that one's definitely like you left takeout in your hot attic.
I love it.
And
it's brutal.
It's got the OG power. Like if you've been smoking hash that flower, it fucking hits you. Like it's probably like the top 4 or 5 strongest cultivars I have in flower form.
Yeah.
Cory, I like. Yeah.
What other cultivars are you working with? You talked about the Wilma and a couple of others, but what are you entertaining outside stuff, or are you really just opening up that line?
No, I'm entertaining outside stuff for other people's work. That's in rotation right now. I've got a Banana OGF3 from Zoolander. I think that's Oregon Kid stock originally. I don't know how he got the starting point, but it's not particularly aromatic, but it's very strong sedative, which is something that I don't really offer a lot. So I keep it for certain people who want that patient wise, and it grows fucking fists. I mean, the thing has large internodal spacing, but massive yield potential. It shows up pretty good in the jar tech. I haven't tried to wash it yet, but it has huge heads. Like, see it with the naked eye kind of shit. And the plant, it's an interesting plant. I almost got rid of it because it's kind of viney and small and veg, but it gets about 4 times stretch when you put it in flower. And I haven't grown anything like that does that, except for I tried growing Double Burger from Skunk House so I could experience some GMO, but that was really bad intersex in my garden. A lot of people seem to like it, but it didn't work for me. And I'm also growing Salmon River OG. I'm growing Poison Peaches from Touched by Cannabis. Jace is an awesome guy. I don't know if you guys know him, but yeah,
Jace,
he's good people. Really talented KNF farmer. So Poison Peaches is Durban cross peach rings. The profile is, I have 2 different cuts, and they're very like loud Durban with like a sweet peach background. But if you smell it, it's like nose burning Durban. But on one of the cuts, the peach ring softens it enough to like not have that like total sharpness, and the other one's just more like strong Durban. But I like the qualities, and he's taken it in a couple directions where it shows a lot of potential, and it really crushed it in the Dep House. It got a 3rd at High 95. So
Oh, very cool.
yeah, and then
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think that might be it. I'm checking out Dan's gear right now from Rebel Grown. So
What are you growing? The Chem Sour?
I'm growing a bunch of different things. So Chadwick Rhodes got sent a care package from Dan, and he's like, "Oh, if you want some of these seeds, I'll hook you up with them." And I was like, "Yeah, I want some of those seeds." So I got like the progression of the OG Sour the F5, and it's the TK Ghost Nose pheno. So he's focusing on that profile, I guess, at least for this small section of seed. And that, I unfortunately only got 1 female out of all the seeds, but it has those fucking greasy, shiny, leathery fucking leaves. It's banging looking. And it's in a torture chamber, and it's fucking shining. So then I also got Rebel Cookies, and this is like a good nose selection, so I don't know the mother plant. But what's really unique about this, I only associate this profile with haze. It's like a vinegary pickle kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this Rebel Cookies has that sweet sugary dough with like this vinegary pickle with like some sort of like yuzu kumquat kind of like, it's citrus, but it's like an ambiguous citrus that's just like overwhelming and sour.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I got this one called Sour Grease, which is this one that's going to interest you guys. It's a double OG Sour F4 that he said dumped in the hash and had over 4% terpenes on sun-grown flower.
Wow.
And it's crossed to the Sugar Lemon Kush. And untouched, the plants are producing like in 1 gallon pots, maybe 10 to 15 tops on average. They're like really production. They have a really natural production structure. I'm really optimistic about them. I'm growing some Emerald Mountain gear right now, the Mimosa Royal Kush. I don't know. I'm trying to branch out, but it's hard when you make your own seeds.
For sure.
Yeah.
Quinn, what's the Haskap sour like?
Oh man, the Haskap sour is awesome. So I hunted. So I went over to Woodstock's house, and he was like, "Yo, we made this thing. It's called Sweet Poly Purebred. It's basically a pure sour, and I can get it. I'll get into the genetics later if you want, but I got to pull the beans out of the flower, so I got to actually smell the mother plant as I'm taking out, and it was just straight Play-Doh. There's like this sour diesel terp that's like just like basically a whole jar of Play-Doh, and I'm just shucking these beans out of this Play-Doh plant. So that's what I hunted for when I went to find it. So the Haskap is fucking grape pie hit with a Sunday brunch which is a mimosa Sunday driver. So mimosa Sunday driver grape pie is what makes Haskap, and it's that hit on to this Sweet Poly Purebred, which is Acapulco Gold. It's a Thai Acapulco Gold. And that is the male hit onto the Underdog OG Sour Diesel BX2. And he had like 70 plants, killed everything except this plant. Like this was a needle in a haystack pheno hunt to find the Sweet Poly Purebred. Hit it with the Haskap. I found the sour pheno out of those. I popped like 25, 30 seeds, found the sour pheno out of there, and it is fucking diesel fuel. Like Like people smoke it, I'll roll up a joint and people smoke it, and I'll have grease on my body like there was a diesel truck running in the room. It's really heavy, rich, greasy smoke, and everybody gets super dumb after they smoke it. Like you could just pickpocket everybody in the room and they wouldn't even fucking know. Like everybody gets dumb, eyes get low, everybody's rocked. Really true sour, but not the sharp sour, more the greasy. It's more of the greasy, like deep fuel diesel sour, I guess is the way to put it. And I did,
just tried the.
and it seems to wash. The flavor seems to come through. So in about 3 weeks, it's going to get a real deal wash. So I'm excited.
Wow, that's very cool. Cory, were you going to say something?
Hold on. What do you guys look for when you're adding breeding stock? So say like, hey, you know, you got these kind of ranges of different phenos that your plants can produce. What do you look for when you want to add to that stable? Yeah,
so I'm a little different than Cory. I'm not breeding first. I just want miracle plants. First thing I'm always looking for the most diverse range of the cannabis spectrum. So anything that is the most unbelievable that I've never seen before, or anything that fits into a pocket that I don't have. So like headache medicine, insomnia, super psychedelic, anything that meets a niche that I don't operate, and something that I'm like, what the fuck is that flavor? I've never smelled anything like that before. Those are kind of the two places I start. Cory, you want to have at it?
So you're just looking for you're looking for unicorns.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for like I'm looking for straight beasts. Yeah, like unicorns, Pegasuses, yeah, all that shit. Exactly. Loch Ness Monster, you know.
What Quinn also means though by that is that when he hunts a new pack of seeds, if it's going to get a place in his garden, it has to either offer something that he doesn't already have, not be a different version of it, or if it's a better version, then it's a replacement for that plant.
Yeah, I play King of the Hill super hard. Like, yeah, I'm always trying to get shit to knock other shit off the fucking, off the stock, because I can only hold like 30 plants tops before shit really starts getting crazy.
And
yeah, fair enough.
For me, I'm trying to pick. I still always go back to my grow ability. Like when I go through plants, generally I'm gonna grow like the best, in my opinion, the best 3 or 4 plants, 3 or 4 flower runs. They're gonna get the torture run. They're gonna get, a good effort run, and then you learn about the plant in that run. Then you try and run it again, and you say, "Wow, that actually showed up." Then you actually put it to the test. Plus, in that amount of time, if I prove viability, my hydro buddy will run it, and I can really see how much it can take. So I don't grow salts, but I love the perspective that it offers, because it's like when Shredder drinks the green juice in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #2 Super Shredder, dude, that's what he can do. It's fucking crazy. Dude, it's like dude, it's just like, like if I'm fucking drinking 12 ounce or like maybe a Maryland 8 ounce Bud Light, he's drinking like a 40. It's crazy. So I just like, for my selection process, it does start from a unique point of view. Unless I'm after a target effect or a target terpene, then that's what I call for, because you have to be indiscriminate. Unless you find that quality, then you're not going to move forward, because that was the point of the line. That was the most unique quality, even though it had all these other good things. Maybe you will, but not in that moment. And so oh man, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
I have a question though. Is in your short but very involved tenure with these plants, what would be something that you would have wished you would have learned earlier in your breeding career?
That's a good question. Well, I don't know if I really know that yet, because I'm still feel like I'm very much learning. But what I do, Quinn will say this. He's like, "Dude, that's gonna take you for fucking ever," and I'm like, "That's how I have to do it, or else I'm gonna have to do it 100 times to learn this lesson." I learned a lot of hard lessons when I started growing and I didn't know what I was doing. And I, grew. I was fortunate to produce the quality that I did in the beginning. And I had some serious pitfalls that forced me to, do crazy shit and see the tolerance of the plant. And now going into the breeding, Quinn knows, like, I didn't even cross with some of my males until I flowered them 3 times.
Yeah.
And
people don't understand the time.
I'm just a goat for punishment, so I just
When
dribble
people
my
ask,
way through it, I'm
people
not
ask
going to
about
produce a lot, but I'm
I'm
going
like,
to hopefully produce high quality and stuff that actually deserves a place. I don't need to produce numbers because, like, that's available to people. And I want to produce things that are unique, like peach and green apple. And like that, like, you take that peach, I call that movie weed. So it offers a lot of the qualities of an indica, like, for your body, but you're in the game and you're ready to go. Like, you're not going to lose your tongue. You're not going to lose your place. You could read a book. You could run a marathon, but your body's great, It's
Absolutely.
I just go back to that, like, effect and growability. That's like just my 2 most important things. I don't care what my weed looks like in a bag. I always don't think I have the prettiest weed when I go to a party, but usually people really like it when I put it in the joint,
Quinn, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, like, earlier I was talking about different breeders breeding for different things, and like the thing the first thing I think of when I think of Cory's work is bulletproof. Like, that is, you might not get the prettiest weed, you might not get the shortest flowering times. He's not usually that concerned about some of that stuff, but if he tells you the flowering time, it's gonna be fucking accurate. But what you will get is some shit that's really hard to fucking hurt, like some unstoppable plants. All 3 of those plants, the green taffy, the princess peach, and the orange cream pop, those are the only 3 things that I like have from Cory. They all fucking crush it outside. So like, as soon as you take his work and put it outside, all the parent stock has already been tested outside in Maine. So there's this genetic knowledge built into a lot of his stuff that when you put it in stressful environments, it outshines everything, which I think is really valuable, especially here in the Northeast.
100%.
I'm fortunate to have also some friends who live really far north in the state that, after beating them down and they gave me 1 season, now they give me all their seasons, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's invaluable, people want to know, like, what these plants can handle. Well, one of my buddies puts most of this shit through at least 3 frosts, and like, he sends me pictures with his plants with snow on them.
Yeah.
So like, it's a harsh environment.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And and plus he's on a river. So it's like, we're just like, you'll talk to people, like, if they want to come here and try to grow outside, it is a learning curve. So like, I can't tolerate that.
Yeah. Quinn, I wanted to ask you the same question. If there was one lesson you wish you had learned earlier in your career, be it cultivation or hash making, what would that be? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, cultivation was definitely biology. Like, I probably spent the first 2 years just fucking shit up. I mean, the first year and a half, I would like thought I was doing no-till, and I didn't fucking understand a thing about no-till. Because I kept thinking that there was like some mineral or some fucking input or some top dress that was like what I needed. What I needed was fucking biology. And when I learned that being a no-till farmer is about understanding the biology present in your soil system, that is when everything fucking changed. And that is when I got out of the fucking red and started making happy plants, and people were really fucking excited to consume my plants, and that whole thing switched. So if you do want to grow organic, I highly recommend that you stop looking at buying nutrients in any format and start trying to find biology, because that is the biggest game changer for me. That got me to where I am and make my plants happy.
Interesting. So Quinn, this question hits even harder for you than I think anybody else being on the show. having probably had some time to think about it, and I'm going to be asking you the same question, Cory, as we kind of wrap things up here. But what is one or more of your most memorable cannabis experiences that you hold and cherish in your mind? Like, is there one experience that you remember as very fondly?
Man, that's a really good fucking question. The greenhouse was always a really big deal for me. Like when I moved up to Maine, I got some greenhouse weed in Cali one time. Fucking blew my mind. So like I always wanted to have a greenhouse, and I kind of went the indoor route first. Um, so last year I already had the greenhouse built, and maybe this sounds weird, but like I put all the plants in the greenhouse alone with IMO4 under every single plant. I put the plants in the ground. I did the whole thing in one day, and that just felt like there was something about that that just felt like so wholesome, like so prepared. Everything just felt so like kind of like I made it. Like it kind of had that like nostalgia built into the moment. Like, yeah, just having all the plants I wanted in the greenhouse, tons of variety, and just like standing in the greenhouse, like it just the whole thing felt pretty dreamy. So maybe there's something more than that, but I think I'm gonna go.
No. That I can feel that for sure as a serious vibration. Getting that done and doing that alone and being very meditative about it.
Yeah.
What about you, Cory? Is there one cannabis experience consuming on a beach or harvesting a special plant that kind of sticks out in your mind as like, hey, this is something that I remember?
Yeah, I mean, my best ever cultivation experience was actually in a greenhouse also. And I was growing, it was the first time I'd ever grown in a greenhouse. We got this amazing opportunity to take over this greenhouse. Some guys came in and built it at my buddy's house, and then they walked away after one season. And at that point, I'd grown a 1 pound plant. That was like my consistent thing. And I've watched these guys in California, they're growing 10-pound fucking plants, and I'm like, what is going on here? We load this baby up. We put 300-gallon smart pots in it, 12 of them in this big greenhouse, and we were able to pull over 4 pounds average off every plant. And it was it was a big milestone for me and a big like sort of perspective to gain. I think like my favorite things about weed in general are just like how you learn a lesson almost through every grow. Your perspective on the plant's potential, your perspective on your own ability to maintain the plant, those things just add up so much. And then like from a conventional like weed story style standpoint, so New Hampshire is really strict on weed here in New England. They say live free or die. Well, do whatever you want till we arrest you should be their motto. And they have this really killer music venue called Hampton Beach Casino Ballroom. And I'm not really like a fight the crowd kind of person at shows. I love going to live music. So we kind of stand in the back, halfway between the bar and the crowd. And we're smoking weed because we smoke weed wherever we go. That's just what we do. And my wife is just taking these big rips off the chillum and blowing clouds. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So we don't have any problems. There's a bunch of tweakers at set break. This is a Mo show. And like, I'm like, geez, Louise. So yeah, I mean, it was great. They throw down live. I like it. So then we're leaving, we're all burnt. We're a little spun. And we think we're getting pulled over. The guy that's driving pulls over. There's a cop behind us with his lights on. And we're sitting there. Nothing's happening. Another cop comes up and parks in front of us with his lights on. We're like boxed in at this point. And my buddy's about to empty his pockets into his mouth. It's like crazy. We have a bunch of weed in the car and We're in New Hampshire, and we're all freaking out. The cops get out and walk into the motel that we pulled over next to. Like, it had nothing to do with us.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great story.
It was
That's fucking
saved by the
amazing.
bud. We just kept on rolling.
Kept on.
That's
rolling.
awesome.
So, Cory, what are you working on this year? What projects are you excited about looking forward?
Well, I think that what we're gonna probably focus on starting in about 7 or 8 weeks. I've never done an S1 before, but it's the best option moving forward with this peach profile. So we're gonna feminize Quinn's cut of the Princess Peach. It's been proven 2 years outside, and this year he even actually gave a copy of it to Sam from Woodstock, and they were like, "Damn, that thing shined outside." So it's a beautiful high, beautiful profile, and it has wash viability, so it can really offer a new profile to the market. So we're going to make an S1 of that, and then also offer some hybrids with that peach. So we haven't ironed out all the details, but I'm hoping to be able to offer people who want to test the hybrids with the peach can have first shot at the S2 when we really can iron that peach terp profile out. We haven't figured out how we're going to do it. Quinn and I are going to kind of come up with a cool incentive for people to grow those, feminized hybrids. And you tasted it. It's something
special.
else.
You can use me as a testimonial. Like you can.
Yeah. We got some people who wouldn't normally hit the rig to go down on the peach when Quinn cracked that jar. It was pretty funny, you know.
It's a special profile for sure. It's not something that you see a lot in resin.
Yes. And even in flower, that's really loud. And what I found with peach strains specifically is you cannot really bank on it coming out in the dried product or the finished product. Even on the plant, it's really hard to capture in a way.
Quinn, what about you this year? Other than the breeding project with Cory, are you looking to expand your product lines at all? Or you offer different products, or just continue focusing on hunting? What's caught your attention?
Basically right now I have these 4x8 beds, and they're like on like 9 inches of wheels, and then that's on about 10 inches of like a 2x4 box frame that I basically built. I'm about to weld stainless steel frames and drop that whole thing to about a 4-inch profile. So I'm going to be going from like 16 inches to like 5 inches and reclaiming like that 13 inches for vertical space and canopy growth. So that's a big project that I'm just getting cracking on now. I'm also going to be replacing all the blue mat drip irrigation. That's basically just like a squiggly mess into actual gridded panels. So there'll be 4 panels in each 4x8 bed. So I can dial in zones of my 4x8 bed, and just have things more controlled, more organized. A big thing I'm doing this year is fruit. So I'm going to be growing strawberries in my indoor beds. I'm going to be having indoor no-till K&F fucking strawberries that I can eat all the time. And I'm also going to be making a food forest. I have like a section of my property that's about 4 acres that was basically clear cut like maybe a decade ago, and is now basically like 10 to 20 foot tall, really thin burst trees. And I'm going to start clearing and feathering fruit trees in to kind of make like an edible forest on the far side of my property. I'm super excited for that. I've always wanted to grow fruits and shit. I'm going to get peaches and apples and Hasscaps and blackberries and all sorts of crazy shit. Another really big project I have going, that is probably the last one I'll mention. There's a farmer who I met at the Regen conference who had the apple cider and the donuts, if you remember him, Jameson.
Yeah.
So he's got a farm. I believe he said it's like 100 acres. They have an apple farm that's partially conventional and partially organic, and the organic side just isn't fucking working. And I want to fucking help. I want to make conventional agriculture not destroy the planet anymore. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to start that. And yeah, it's something that Chris kind of like pointed out, and I've been if you watch the Kiss the Ground documentary on Netflix, how agriculture is actually over 50% of the pollution on the planet.
Yep.
And natural farming is a really elegant solution to that agricultural problem. And it's great in cannabis. Start bringing it to conventional agriculture. So if anybody is like savvy with video or wants to film a video or make a video and wants to help document the transformation of any of these farms that I've been working on, please reach out. I would love some help. I don't know what it'll look like for financial incentive or whatever, but like we're all creative people. I'm sure we can figure something out. I'm just trying to get like a lifetime supply of apple cider donuts. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. So
Those
that's
donuts were so good. The apple cider was so good, and it was like killer when you've been dabbing all day and you needed a natural sugar rush. It was
it was so good.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, man, I appreciate you guys coming on so much. I can't even tell you what's the best way people can reach you. Is the best way to get at you your Instagram?
Yeah, I'm pretty steady with my Instagram. I mean that and phone is pretty much all I do. I don't really Facebook or any other platforms. Yeah.
Awesome, man. And Cory, same as you. The best way to reach you, is that your IG?
Yeah, I'd say that's the best way. I'm pretty responsive.
I'm definitely thinking I'm gonna have some testers to send your way for those Princess Peach S1s, bro. I don't think you're gonna have a hard time with the reputation you guys have.
Gonna be fucking fire. Like I've got a bunch of shit we're gonna outcross the peach to, and then like I want to do in crosses rather than just S2s. So it's gonna be fun. We're gonna do a lot of shit, take it in a lot of directions and see what works.
Very excited. Very excited. We'd love to have you guys back on the show again, and definitely stoked to get out for another regen next year. So definitely stoked to touch base, guys. But thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, James. Thank you, RJ. Thank you, BP.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Cheers, guys. Have a great night. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being on. Hold on, let me play this thing out.
We playing it out.
Peace.